Good evening. I'd like to call to order the special meeting for May 18th, 2026. Please rise as you are able and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Will the clerk please call the roll of the members?
Rachel Holteen.
Present.
Dan Larson.
Present.
Kathleen Martell.
Here.
Scott Ohm.
Here.
Mike Okada.
Here.
Patrick Quinn.
Here, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Jenny Snell.
Present.
Susan Wood.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. We have no minutes to approve tonight. We only have one agenda item, so do we have any issues with the one agenda? We're good, okay, that was easy. We have no proclamations and ceremonies, so we will go right to public's right to speak. Mr. Goff, would you grab me the list, or Mr. Renaud? Oh, thank you.
Somebody.
Or Ms. Mikulak. Apparently, the city attorney forgot to tell you that was. Thank you. A very important part of his job. Yes, absolutely. So we will go tonight to our public's right to speak. Citizens will have up to 3 minutes to speak on any agenda item not on the agenda tonight. When you come up, please introduce yourself, spell your last name for the record, let us know whether you live or work in Wheat Ridge, and then you'll have 3 minutes to speak. On the clerk's desk there are 3 lights. The green light, you've got plenty of time to speak. When it starts blinking, you've got about a minute to start wrapping up. The yellow light tells you got about 30 seconds, and when it turns red, please wrap up your comments. I will call the first person up, and then I'll call our on-deck person. It looks like we have Montana Stevenson up, and then Nikki Larson on deck.
Hello, my name is Montana Stevenson, Stevenson, and I'm a resident of Wheat Ridge. I live on Harlan Street, and I'm here tonight to talk about the Silver Bullet shooting range on 38th. I live about a quarter of a mile away from the shooting range, and I was outside gardening with my kids this weekend and periodically had to hear the pop, pop, pop of gunshots from the range from my backyard. And this is not an infrequent occurrence. It just happens to be warm now, so I'm outside more. And, needless to say, it's pretty unpleasant. I, along with my neighbor Nikki, walked our neighborhood a couple of months ago and spoke to people about their experiences with the sound of the shooting range. And we talked to people who live up to a half a mile away who can hear the range from their yards. I know that a lot of modern shooting ranges that are inside are much quieter. It doesn't have to be audible from a half mile away. I talked to another resident in District 1 recently who mentioned she goes to a range in Lakewood that's partially underground. So I know it is possible for a range to be quieter. And beyond, the unpleasantness of listening to this, I'm concerned about it because of the new development that's planned on 38th, and we want to see 38th be kind of a vibrant business corridor. And I think that right now, with the level of noise coming from the range, it's really incompatible with increased residential density. All these new apartment buildings. There's one near Bardo that's going to go up, and then possibly one on the old iPie site. People who live in those apartments are definitely going to be able to hear it, especially if they're up high. There's also new planned commercial development, at least in the apartment complex that's going up near the Bardo Coffee Shop. And, if businesses have outdoor seating, I think it's going to be really hard for them to keep people coming and enjoying their business and patronizing their business if they can hear that kind of noise. So in sum, I just really want to reiterate that it's still a concern, and I would ask you to please look for a solution that meets the needs of residents and new businesses in the area. Thank you.
Thank you. Nikki Larson.
Nikki Larson, Larsen. I'm a resident in Wheat Ridge. I live on Harlan. Sorry, I'll get over here by the mic. So picking up where Montana kind of left off, I'm here to speak about the noise mitigation project at the Silver Bullet Shooting Range. My concern is how nearly $40,000 in public funds were spent on a project that failed to deliver meaningful results. In November of '24, the city distributed a flyer stating proposed improvements would noticeably reduce gunshot noise. Based on that promise, 27 neighbors submitted letters supporting the project. But after the work was completed, residents noticed no meaningful difference. I learned afterwards that we were not given key information when the city solicited feedback. First, there was an acoustical study done that only measured homes 135 to 225 feet north of the range and excluded residents to the south, where many complaints originated, including my home, which is 530 feet away. When I asked why the south wasn't included, I was told it would have cost more money. That is not a valid excuse. Residents to the south had been making complaints for years, and yet we were excluded from the study. Second, residents were never told what noticeably reduce actually meant. The study projected a 4 to 6 decibel reduction, and the city achieved about 5 decibels. But the same report stated it takes roughly a 10 decibel reduction for sound to be perceived as half as loud. The report also explicitly stated that even after mitigation, gunshots will still be audible, and they are, daily, in our yards and inside our homes. Third, the acoustical consultants didn't independently verify the results. Instead, Wheat Ridge PD performed a simple decibel meter check and declared success. After the city invested almost $40,000 with no results, my neighbor and I went door to door last November, gathering 70 signatures from residents and businesses still impacted by the noise. We submitted that petition in December addressed to the mayor, city council, and city manager, but only learned in April that it had never been distributed to council. For residents who have spent years trying to engage respectfully through the proper channels, that was extremely discouraging. As you consider tonight's car wash permit and its impact on neighbors' quality of life, I ask that you also consider what it means for residents to continually hear gunshots in their homes. The city has invested heavily in revitalizing 38th Avenue, and we're asking developers to invest in an area where gunshots are audible 7 days a week from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. I'm not asking you to penalize the shooting range. I'm asking for accountability. First, acknowledge the project failed to deliver meaningful results for residents. Second, require better oversight for publicly funded projects. Third, communicate with the property owner, not the tenant, about the long-term future of this property as 38th Avenue continues evolving and hundreds of residential units are added nearby. If we had been told up front that noticeably reduced meant still hearing gunshots inside our homes, many of us would not have supported the project. Our community deserves honest communication, responsible stewardship of public funds, and solutions that actually improve our quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you. We have nobody else signed up for our public's right to speak tonight, so I will go to Mayor Pro Tem Hulteen for a point of order real quick.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that. In preparing for this hearing, the attorneys representing Auto Wash submitted a core request for the correspondence of several staff members and elected officials, including me. After reviewing the material, Auto Wash's legal team requested my recusal, and I was not the only recusal requested. I've done nothing wrong, as the communications I had with the Gray Street neighbors were not subject to quasi-judicial restrictions and were done in good faith to engage with my constituents to address an issue over the course of 18 months. However, should there be future disputes stemming from tonight's proceedings, my compassionate tone and discussion of the process before the notice of the hearing could cause complications. I take quasi-judicial proceedings very seriously, and while I believe I am capable of serving in an unbiased capacity, and I took this approach as I prepared for the hearing over the last 10 days, I am volunteering to recuse myself as to not cast any doubts on the deliberations and decisions made here tonight. It is in service to all parties to reach a fair conclusion without unnecessary delays. I have every confidence that my colleagues will act with the same integrity. And with that, I'm requesting a unanimous consensus supporting my voluntary recusal from this hearing tonight. Do I have a consensus?
Yeah, thank you.
From the charter here in section 5.9, it concerns voting by members of the council. It has a statement that, as one would expect, that a council member is not to vote where it a member has a conflict of interest. But it goes on to say, on all other questions, such as this, each member who is present shall vote unless excused by the unanimous consent of the remaining members present. The reason for that, it goes on to explain, it says that any member refusing to vote except when not so required by this paragraph shall be guilty of misconduct in office. So in other words, it recognizes there are situations where there might be reasons for a counselor not to vote, and that is an excusable reason, and just sets up a process where the mayor would ask for unanimous consent on that lack of voting.
Okay, thank you. Do we have unanimous consent for Councilor Hulteen to recuse herself tonight? Seeing that, we do. So we will go ahead and excuse Mayor Pro Tem Hulteen with our thank you, and we will move on to agenda item number 1. Councilor Ohm, will you please introduce this item?
Thank you, Mayor. Review of a previously issued special use permit, SUP 2301, and associated conditions related to Lakeside Auto Wash. At issue, the purpose of this public hearing is for City Council to review the special use permit for Lakeside Auto Wash located at 5900 West 44th Avenue. Pursuant to Section 26-114.f of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws, City Council shall determine whether modification, additional conditions, or revocation is warranted based on operational impacts.
Thank you, Councilor Ohm. This is a motion for the council. It is a public hearing. It is quasi-judicial. I will open the public hearing. I'm going to read a statement really quick. We don't normally do this, but because we have so many, I believe, new faces in the crowd, we want to kind of let everybody know how everything is going to run down tonight. So I'm going to read this. It's a little bit long. Just kind of bear with me and follow along. I now open the public hearing on case number SUP-23-01. Review of a previously issued special use permit and associated conditions related to Lakeside Auto Wash, 5900 West 44th Avenue in Wheat Ridge. A summary of the hearing procedure. I want to take this opportunity to describe the procedure which we will follow in the hearing tonight. Everyone will have their opportunity to speak, so I appreciate your patience as we do so. The order in which things will follow. I will open the public hearing on the Lakeside Auto Wash special use permit, which I have just now done. The community development staff will have approximately 30 minutes to present their staff report and will introduce the city's case file and exhibits into the record. Representatives for Auto Wash will next have approximately 45 minutes to present any witnesses and evidence that they wish. We will then take public testimony, first from persons who have registered online to speak, then in order of which persons have signed up to speak on the sheet in the back of the room. If you have not signed up to testify, I encourage you to quietly head on back and go ahead and make sure you've done so. I will limit public testimony to 4 minutes per speaker. You may not donate time to any speaker. Everyone who wants to speak will get to do so. If you agree with the previous speaker, I encourage you to say that you do so in order to save time. We'll go ahead. We get if you're in favor or against it. So if you want to save a little time and just say you agree, that's perfectly fine. I will then give city staff the opportunity to provide any final comments. I will then give Auto Wash representative the opportunity to present any final comments, which may respond to any points made during the staff or public comment testimony. After all the testimony, I will give the council the opportunity to ask questions of the staff or Auto Wash. I am asking council to reserve their questions until all the testimony is completed, as I think it will likely that most of your questions will be answered by the testimony that's given. I may declare a short recess after the staff and Auto Wash testimony, or at any time during the public testimony, depending on the time, to give everyone just a little bit of a break. After all the testimony and council questions, I will close the testimony portion of the hearing and the council will deliberate. The council may take advice from the city attorney during the deliberations, but will not take any additional testimony from staff, Auto Wash, or the public. After deliberation, the council may choose to take action tonight or instead decide to continue the deliberation and action on a matter for a further date. If it chooses to do so, unless it chooses to repost and republish the hearing, that future date will not include any further testimony from anyone, neither the staff, the Auto Wash, nor the public. It is my hope and my expectation that we will be able to conclude our work on this tonight, but I don't want to rush anybody. Finally, I want to acknowledge that many of you in this room here are passionate about this matter, and the council and I are mindful of that. However, I ask that testimony be directed to the council, who are the decision makers, not to each other, that there is no applause, no boos, no hissing during the testimony, no clapping and no cheering for any witnesses. Please treat all witnesses as you would want to be treated when you are a witness. For the record tonight, if you give any testimony, whether in person or as an online speaker, in being permitted to give that testimony, you thereby affirm that you will be doing so by telling the truth as you understand it. So to recap, the staff presentation will be approximately 30 minutes. The auto wash presentation will be approximately 45 minutes. Both auto wash and staff will have a chance to make any final comments after the main testimony. Then we will take public testimony limited to 4 minutes per speaker. We'll try to make it as easy as possible. All right. So we will go ahead and start by recognizing the city attorney and go from there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of procedural matters that we should address. The first concerns ex parte communications. You will remember that Latin phrase, I'm sure, from your legal trainings with the City Attorney Jerry Dahl. An ex parte communication is a communication by a party to a decision outside the context of the hearing on the matter to a decision maker in the matter. I am aware that this matter has been going on for some 12 to 18 months, and that it didn't start as a quasi-judicial matter. It did not start as this proceeding that you are now engaged in. It started as a result, as I understand it, of some citizen complaints, and there was administrative investigation, there was cooperation between the parties, there was apparent resolution for a while. But the point is that communications went back and forth for quite some time during this 12 to 18 month period. Those communications have come from various locations, among them the podium here in the middle of public meetings. Among them letters, emails, and various forms of electronic communications from both opponents and proponents to the auto wash facility that you are going to be discussing tonight. So first, I just want to recognize that fact. Next, I would like you to raise your hand if you are aware from the legal trainings that the city attorney has given you probably more than once, that when you are acting in a quasi-judicial manner, as you are tonight, that you are to consider only the evidence presented to you in tonight's hearing or in connection with the hearing, the written materials provided by staff or provided by representatives for auto wash, that you are to consider only those materials and information and testimony and evidence, and that you are to completely disregard any prior communications that you've had about any of those matters. Would you raise your hand if that is your understanding from your prior legal training? And the record will reflect all members are raising their hand. Now I'll ask for just one more raise of the hands. Please raise your hand if not only do you understand it, but you think that you will be able to disregard all of those communications in making your decision tonight, and that you can base your decision solely on the evidence presented tonight or as part of the record that was prepared in connection with tonight's hearing. Again, a show of hands. You feel you can do that. Thank you again. If the record would reflect that all members present raised their hand. Next, as a procedural matter, I would like to address the letter from John Peckler to Councilor Scott Ohm and myself, dated this morning. Similar, though much briefer, than the letter addressed to Councilor Hulteen and myself. It argues that Councilor Ohm has a bias against auto wash, and that accordingly Councilor Ohm should recuse himself from these proceedings. The recitations of statements on which those allegations of bias are based are relatively few. I'm not going to address them specifically in this proceeding, but I do have a couple of questions for you, Councilor Ohm, if I may. First of all, I'm going to ask you to state whether you did receive that letter and whether you have reviewed it.
Yes, I did.
I figured you did. Do you have any ill will against Auto Wash or any of its employees, representatives, legal counsel, anybody involved with them?
No, I don't.
Do you think that Auto Wash or its employees or representatives have been bad actors in any way during the proceedings that have occurred between Auto Wash and the city over the last 12 to 18 months?
No.
Do you understand that Auto Wash has an absolute right to an impartial and unbiased decision maker in this matter?
Yes.
Again, probably from legal training from Jerry Dahl, right? Both here and you served on the planning commission as well, correct? So you would
Correct.
have received that more than once. Having established all that as background, do you believe, regardless of any prior statements that you may have made, or even with respect again to the ex parte communications you may have received, that you can be a fair and impartial and unbiased decision maker in this proceeding tonight?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, that's all I have for the moment. Thank you.
Then we will recognize our community development staff for a presentation, roughly 30 minutes, and it is 50 after.
Thank you. Good evening. For the record, my name is Lauren Mikulak. I'm the Community Development Director for the City of Wheat Ridge. I'll be presenting tonight's case, and I would like to enter into the public record the contents of the case file, the municipal code, the comprehensive plan, and this digital presentation. The property is within the City of Wheat Ridge. All appropriate notification and posting requirements have been met, and City Council has jurisdiction to hear this case. Tonight, my presentation will include a reminder of what a special use means, an overview of the site and the case history, and then I'll talk about the applicable code sections and end with my analysis and staff recommendations. As you heard in the introduction this evening, the purpose of tonight's hearing is to review the special use permit that was previously issued for Lakeside Auto Wash and determine what, if any, action is warranted. A special use, as you may know, is a discretionary land use, which may or may not be permitted depending on the operations, the characteristics, and the location. Special uses are regulated in the city code by section 26-114, and any use that is deemed a special use would be listed as such in our permitted use charts in the zoning code. Special uses require additional review above and beyond what a permitted use would entail. The code allows for approval by either the director or by city council, and special uses may include conditions of approval to mitigate potential impacts. The code outlines application requirements, the review process, and 9 different criteria for review, most of which focus on appropriate design, operation, and compatibility. And as you see on this slide, the code says that if a special use is properly designed, developed, operated, and maintained, it may be permitted. In their SUP application in response to the criteria, Auto Wash asserted that the car wash would not have an impact to the surrounding area, but we have data and observations from the last year that indicate otherwise. The application depicted bay doors closed, but those doors have been inconsistently opened and closed throughout operations. And over the last year, there has been inconsistent compliance with noise regulations. Mitigation efforts have been made, but they have not resulted in sustained resolution. Ultimately, there is evidence that the car wash has materially altered in scope, application, and design since the original application was made and approved. In this kind of situation, the code allows for a review of a special use. The code does not allow me as the director to modify the original SUP approval to address impacts, but instead provides that authority only to City Council. The issue before Council tonight is whether the car wash, as it's operated over the last year, has altered in scope, application, or design, and if so, if any action is required. I have presented in the staff report and will address again at the end of my presentation 3 potential options for Council: to leave the special use permit as is, to revoke it, or to modify conditions of approval to mitigate observed impacts. I am recommending that third option, to modify the SUP, and I will detail that later in the presentation. So we'll start walking through a little bit of the overview of the site and the history. This was, as I mentioned earlier, administratively approved. We have here an aerial of the subject property. So north is to the top of the screen. Right in the middle of the screen is the intersection of West 44th Avenue and Harlan Street. And you can see Auto Wash there circled in blue. Along 44th Avenue, there are several businesses within Wheat Ridge and also in neighboring Mountain View. That's the area that's shaded in white. In this next image, I've added an overlay of our current zoning map, and this maybe visually shows the juxtaposition of our commercial corridors and our adjacent neighborhoods. So Ottawash is zoned Commercial 1, C1, and that is a zone district that allows for a wide range of permitted and special uses. A few other properties on 44th are also zoned C1. The properties that are most immediately adjacent are in that darker orange-red color. That's the restricted commercial zone district. So the zoning on the Easy Pond, Vet Clinic, and Music Shop. Beyond that commercial corridor on 44th and Harlan, you see yellowish and orange colors. Those are the residential neighborhoods. R3 is the neighborhood that's closest to Ottawash to the south there. The closest single unit home is actually zoned mixed use. That's the blue color. It's a zone district that allows for either commercial or residential uses. It has been used residentially for quite some time. A couple images of the property in its former and current condition. So this is an older picture of the site. This corner has actually operated as a car wash for about 25 years. It started as a self-serve car wash in 1997. And here you're seeing an image of that prior car wash with the bays closer to 44th. And then if you look through the bays, you see a second canopy where the vacuums were on the south side of the old arrangement. Around 2015, that eastern bay was converted to be an automatic wash, and the other four were all self-serve. In 2022, Ottawash had a pre-application meeting with our team to propose replacing that former car wash and redevelop the site. So what you're seeing here is an image of the site in its current condition. The formal application was submitted in February 2023, included a site plan, a narrative, and a response to the special use permit criteria, which was included in your meeting packet as attachment 3. In this image, you can see that the vacuums were shifted to the west side of the site. So those are the sort of circular loops on the right side of the image. Four automatic bays were constructed, and the cars actually enter predominantly from 44th and circle to the back of the site and then exit on the north side. We had a few rounds of review through the special use permit, but there really wasn't a lot of significant changes from the first to final submittal. This image shows the circulation maybe a little more clearly. This is from the approved site plan set. Again, site has primary access on 44th Avenue. That's a wider curb cut. You can see the four bay building is sort of the polygon in the middle of the screen. The angled parking on the left side of the screen is the vacuum sites. And then there's a smaller access off Gray Street that's actually provides an escape lane, so no one is forced through the car wash if they don't want to go through it. Staff's findings in 2024 as part of the SUP review were based on the information submitted during the application process. Of course, we review special use permits when they're theoretical before they are constructed. Neither the submittal nor the review process focused heavily on operational noise. I think the expectation at the time was that an upgraded car wash with relocated vacuums and enclosed bays would reduce impacts compared to the prior open bay configuration. The applicant reviewed and responded to the SUP criteria also included in your packet and asserted that the car wash would not have a detrimental effect on the neighborhood and would be compatible with the area. Based on those application materials, staff concluded the same, and the project qualified for administrative review, so I approved the special use permit in January 2024. Those findings and conditions of approval were included in your packet in attachment 2, and I've provided them in part here on the slide. The first condition of approval was that the special use must be consistent with the representations depicted in the application materials. Additional conditions required a building permit be obtained and that SUP was only granted to Ottawash, not to be inherited. There were no conditions enumerating specific operational standards at that time. After construction was complete, Ottawash opened in February of 2025, about 15 months ago, and concerns from neighbors began within just a couple weeks of opening, coming through multiple channels with a focus on dryer noise, bay doors being open, 24-hour operations, and impacts on the nearby neighborhood. Both police and community development staff became involved. Code enforcement responded initially, responding multiple times actually to observe the site and take noise readings. Because the pattern of comments from neighbors and because Ottawash was approved through a special use permit, our planning manager and I were both involved by May of 2025. Our goal at that time was really to open a dialogue and understand the scope of the issue. I think it took all of us by surprise at the time. We were trying to understand if there were easy voluntary changes that could address issues and create long-term resolution for both Ottawash and the neighbors. This back and forth lasted, as you saw in the timeline in attachment 1, for the better part of last year. After meeting and corresponding, Ottawash did modify their hours and their vacuum equipment, and unfortunately impacts persisted, and I issued a notice of special use violation last summer in June 2025. In response to that notice, Ottawash proposed a voluntary 90-day closure, and during that time they engaged a sound consultant, determined the need to close the fourth bay, agreed to modified hours, and constructed a 6-foot fence with a faux stone treatment to dampen the noise. They completed a follow-up sound study and reopened 3 of the 4 bays last November with operating hours between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. There has been really, as you've seen, a year-long history of meetings and site visits, equipment adjustments, noise readings, voluntary closure, the offer of mediation, reduced hours, reduced bays. I think the challenge is that continued concerns and impacts remain. Through that process, and as you see summarized here, conditions today are different than when the car wash originally opened, but we're still observing operational variability and continued neighborhood impacts, which is why we're here tonight. I very intentionally did not move more quickly to enforcement or revocation. I think staff and Ottawash spent a significant amount of time trying to pursue voluntary compliance, adjustments, and technical study. The application was originally approved because of the assertion that there would be no impacts and because of the depiction of closed bay doors. The SUP approval requires the car wash to open consistently with those representations in the materials. In terms of seeking code compliance voluntarily over the last year, we've been taking it from 2 perspectives. First, through noise regulations, which exist in both city code and state codes. And frankly, Ottawash and the city invested significant time and money in measuring noise levels with the hope that strict compliance with those noise levels and city codes and state limitations would resolve the impact. Noise readings, as you know, are point-in-time data, and they vary based on a wide range of variables, from the equipment being used to the doors being open or closed, to the size of the car or the types of the wheels, and even the weather. Sometimes operations are falling within applicable limits, and sometimes they're not. Noise compliance is important, but it's not the only consideration. And so the broader question tonight is whether the use is satisfying the discretionary special use permit criteria, not only through its original design, but also through its continued operation and maintenance. As I mentioned earlier, the code requires that special uses be properly designed, developed, operated, and maintained in compliance with the SUP criteria, meaning it won't have a detrimental effect on the general health, welfare, and safety of persons residing or working in the area. As I've mentioned as well, the SUP approval requires that the use be consistent with the application materials. Based on the history that I've described tonight and in greater length in the staff report, including staff observations, noise readings, neighborhood statements, and ongoing compliance efforts over the last 15 months, I have determined that the car wash operations are resulting in adverse impacts and have materially altered in scope, application, and design. Based on a pattern of inconsistent operational characteristics and a series of very well-meaning but ultimately unsuccessful attempts to achieve compatibility and compliance through voluntary measures, I do believe the car wash can be compatible with the surrounding area through the addition of several conditions that may not only mitigate impacts, but also create more clear operational expectations and, most importantly, align the operations with the original assertions in the SUP application. As I mentioned in the very beginning, I'm not able to achieve or apply or create new conditions myself. That falls within council's authority. So again, the code offers council several paths to modify the SUP, leave it as is, or revoke it. The code does require that deliberation and analysis occur in a public hearing format, as we're doing tonight. I shared at the outset that my recommendation is to require corrective measures and to modify the special use permit with the addition of several conditions. I believe reasonable conditions can be applied to allow the car wash to continue operating and to mitigate impacts, and I've recommended 6 conditions in the staff report for council consideration. Those are presented here. Include that the bay doors be closed on the north and south sides during the wash and dry cycle, that hours of operations be limited to 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., that on-site signage requests customers limit noise. I think those have been either considered or added voluntarily, but a condition would ensure that they remain. That trash cans be sized and maintained appropriately because there have been periodic observations that smaller trash cans overflow at the vacuum stations. That the car wash comply with all applicable noise standards, and lastly, that sound measurements be conducted and supplied for compliance with applicable noise standards if Auto Wash chooses to make operational changes in the future, such as changing equipment or returning that fourth bay to service. I think ultimately this hearing tonight is about whether the car wash operation as it's been functioning complies with the conditions in the SUP. I don't think that it does today. I do think that we can get there with some minor modification of the SUP conditions. Lastly, as required by code and in advance of this hearing, a 15-day notice was provided by letter, sign, and in the newspaper. As you know, Wheat Ridge Speaks is the repository that we use for submitting public comment online, and 83 comments were received. 1 letter was also received outside of Wheat Ridge Speaks. All comments have been incorporated into the public record and provided in full to council and to the Auto Wash team. That concludes my staff presentation on time. And now I will set up the slides and give Auto Wash the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Mikulak. So we will then go ahead and recognize the Auto Wash witness to go ahead and call their witnesses and make their presentation.
That work okay? Great. All right. So my name is Dennis Driesen. We obviously have the car wash in Wheat Ridge and offices at 9525 East 40th in Denver, Colorado. It's my wife, Erin. I co-founded Auto Wash about 14 years ago here in Colorado. We started as a local mom and pop business, and it has grown over the last decade into a company with 26 locations, this being our 26th location in the Denver area, built around trying to provide better customer experiences and operate responsibly in the communities that we serve. When we invested in the location, our goal was to improve what we had long been viewed as a problem site. We believed that we could take a struggling property and turn it into something cleaner, safer, more modern, and more beneficial to the surrounding area. We made a significant investment with that purpose in mind and relied on the approvals and processes by the city as we moved forward. We're here tonight in good faith. We understand that concerns have been raised, and we take those concerns seriously. Our intention has never been to create conflict with the neighborhood or the city. Our goal is to continue working collaboratively with the staff and with the community and the council to find practical and reasonable solutions. We value our relationship with the city and want to continue being a positive business partner in the community member for years to come. When we, before Auto Wash redeveloped the property, the prior car wash facility had been in there for some time, since 1997, had started to become, over time became overrun with just really rundown, trash, homeless people, drugs, things that we would find were needles and all that kind of stuff that we had. It was kind of a rough problem site. Importantly, it was I guess the most important thing, besides it starting to contribute to blight, and we didn't think it was working the way it should. It wasn't a new use, right? It had an automatic bay. It has doors that are visible actually in the picture that that Lauren showed up. There are cars in there operating with the car wash automatic bay, operating with doors open, closest to Gray Street there. So that it wasn't new that there would be an automatic bay with doors open operating on that side. And then the vacuums, what we noticed when we first took over the property, all the vacuums lined up the south side of the property right next to the residence. And I thought, how awful must that be if everybody's vacuuming, which is it can be loud, they've got their music blasting, it can be smelly, and just all that. It seemed like it was a bad place for vacuums to be in the first place. And so one of the first things we want to do is move those away from the neighbor's housing, thinking that that would be probably a good move. And so when we began the revitalization process, we had a shared goal with the city, was to make an improvement to, with vacuums on the side, shielding them from the neighbors. We followed the exact city process. We had the city hearings, the public hearing. No comments were made about the site. Matter of fact, we got lots of applause during those hearings about how wonderful it was that we were going to replace this old, dilapidated, beat-up car wash with something new and exciting for the neighborhood. From there, we obviously had to do get our permits approved, get our certificate of operation, went through all those processes to make sure that to confirm that what we built was to spec, was what the city had requested that we had. What we didn't see were any conditions to do anything different than what we had built. We've scoured the plans back and forth over and over again to look for anything that we might have missed when we did that. And there was no comment during any of our periods. And it took almost 2 years to get this product to permit, right? And in that 2 years, no one ever asked or opined or made any kind of comment about sound as an issue on this property. Had there been, we would have incorporated it like we have now, where we've gone in and put the sign in. And we'll talk a little bit more later about some of the improvements that we've made to try to make it a better place and better fit into the community. Along 44th, as Gretchen was showing, or not Gretchen, I'm sorry, Lauren was showing earlier, the uses, there's not much buffer in between, right? It goes from commercial to a very thin layer of restricted commercial and then right to a residential. And part of that, and you look at the long-term plans for Wheat Ridge, for that 44th corridor, it promotes more commercial businesses being along 44th Avenue. I would struggle to understand what kind of business can go in if the driving of cars on a property can bother the neighbors and make it unusable or make it a nuisance with that simple noise of a vehicle running on the street. Matter of fact, I think it's been interesting that most of the sound studies that we've done and a lot of the police reports from their sound studies is that the sound off of 44th is louder than almost anything from our car wash, almost at all times. And so we want to make sure that we're taking into account that that there's not a buffer there. That's part of being inner city. It's part of being in a corridor that is mixed use. Yep.
I'm Troy Kirschman. I'm the owner of Huber Architecture. Address is 383 Inverness Parkway, Suite 175, Inglewood, 80112. Last name is Kirschman, K-I-R-S-C-H-M-A-N. Councilman Ohm, I think we've worked together in a previous lifetime, and in fact, you may have worked on some car washes for me back in the day with Arcodev, so it's good to see you. I'm surprised to see you, so it's good. So I've been working on car washes for approximately 25 years. I have worked on hundreds of car washes. The majority of them have been in Colorado. See feedback that there was an issue or potential issue. See feedback that there was an issue or potential issue with noise, whether that was from traffic, whether that was from radios, whether that was from equipment. Department with the City Council. That's something that we easily that's something that we easily could have addressed at the time. I can tell you now it's a lot more difficult to do so. And I appreciate the fact that Dennis and Aaron and their team have been working with the city to mitigate how it will be when it's operating, but because we want to show the finishes, the materials, the colors. Those are things that the Community Development Department needs to see and approve as a part of this application. So I can say that this is very typical, and I would guess that a lot of the applications this city sees projects that have overhead doors, they are depicted in the down position, regardless of what's happening behind them. In order for those doors to be of any use, they must be open. So this is not a misrepresentation of what the building would look like or what position the doors would be in during operation. This is simply typical of what we would normally do, whether it's a car wash project, a man cave project, which we do lots of those as well, storage. This is just very typical of what we would do in this kind of application. In preparing for this hearing, I did go back and look through the zoning and development code. I found no reference that prohibited overhead doors remaining open during the operation of car wash equipment. So there was nothing explicit in the code that said they needed to be in the closed position, nor did I find anything suggestive of it in the code when I was preparing for this meeting. 10, that information is documented either on the drawings themselves as a part of the project narrative, the official project narrative, or by separate document that's submitted and approved to. So want to make sure this body understands that by comparing this particular wash to another wash, you may not want to do that because equipment is different from the one with our clients, with any jurisdiction that we're dealing with, because our reputation is what
Leton. I'm an attorney with Spencer Bain. Leton. I'm an attorney with Spencer Bain, outside Land Use Council for Ottawash, and here to speak on their behalf this evening. So I'd like to start just with some clarification on the posture of how we're here tonight. Ottawash doesn't dispute that a special use is discretionary. The approval of a special use is discretionary. In whatever jurisdiction you're in, there's a lot of criteria that they're reviewed under, and the jurisdictions, including Wheat Ridge, have a lot of discretion in terms of whether they approve or they deny a special use. But once that special use is approved, it no longer operates solely at the discretion of the jurisdiction. And that's really important because once the permit is approved, it's governed by the conditions and the stipulations in the permit, and that's expressed in the Wheat Ridge Code, that's how it operates, as well as, of course, other applicable law. So Ottawash does take issue with the presenting this as a review process, and the city found that what they proposed to build was compatible and wouldn't cause detrimental impacts on the community. So under this posture, where there's no condition that speaks specifically to door operation or there's a noise ordinance or a noise statute in the state of Colorado, both of which are applicable and as we'll discuss here, have guided the process to date in terms of evaluation and mitigation. So part of the problem that we've run into in this process of working with the city over the last 18 months on mitigation and evaluating impacts is we've struggled to figure out what the exact standard is here, what the target is here. When we first got involved, my law firm first got involved in this matter, Ottawash had been cited under the noise ordinance, the City of Wheat Ridge noise ordinance, for disturbing the peace. And it's hard to read here, but in that top clip, which is from the citation, the police were applying the noise limits from the City of Wheat Ridge noise ordinance, which is also snipped right below there, which is 65 decibels during daytime, so 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., and 60 decibels during nighttime, 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. So that's where we thought we were beginning this process. But at different times and early on in discussions with the planning department, we were trying to understand, are we targeting the state noise statute standards, the City of Wheat Ridge statute or ordinance standards? And the response that we got is, because you're a special use and you operate discretionarily, that it's inherently subjective, were the exact words that were used. And that really has been a very difficult piece to deal with, because there are
there are there's a noise ordinance and there is a noise statute. Yet the city says we ignore those if you are a special use, and we determine based off all objective criteria that really have never been fleshed out very well, whether you're causing detrimental impact or unreasonable noise is the term under the ordinance that the city was relying on. So that's kind of where we started this process, and then we were tasked with getting a sound study at the city's request, and Autowash voluntarily agreed to pay for that. And the sound engineer quickly said, well, I need a standard so I know what the target is, and I need a standard so I can put that into my model and so that I can model proper mitigation. So we know that what you're doing here in this effort is going to result in a compliant property. And through that process, and you'll see if you look at the WAVE engineering reports, we decided to use the city's standard, and that was done in consultation with city staff. And we thought we were on the path to, using those standards as the baseline in terms of what's reasonable and what's not reasonable. So under that assumption, we went through the process, and the model recommended installing the 6-foot sound wall that Mr. Dreesen mentioned. And that was supposed to mitigate the sound. So that's what we did. Autowash reopened, and then we did follow-up sound measurements, and those measurements came back showing that sound had been attenuated down into the neighborhood within the applicable City of Wheat Ridge standards. We'll show the table up later, but they were in the 40 to low 50 decibel range, so compliant with, and it depends on if it's the receiving property is zoned commercially or residentially, but we felt that we met the standards. We discussed that with the city. The city agreed that Autowash could continue operating based on the data that they were receiving. And so that's what we did. And then we get to further down in the process where the city decided they were going to do their own sound study. And that was, in the November, December timeframe of 2025. And we said that's fine, and the city also communicated to us that they had staff or code enforcement officers out routinely or periodically testing sound from the car wash, and they indicated to us that they had no qualms with or concerns with the results that were being measured by city staff at that time. So Autowash thought that we had made progress and that this was all moving towards the amicable resolution that I think we all had hoped for. But then we get the draft of the city's sound study, and once again, the city had shifted from its own standards to the state statute. And it's the same for residential. It's the 50-55 dBA or decibels for residential standard, but it does shift the commercial standard down from 65 daytime to 60 daytime, and 55 or 60 nighttime down to 55 evening. And that shifted the bar again for us, which then all of a sudden the data that showed it was compliant with the standard that we thought we were moving to, all of a sudden it was questionable. And there's still a lot of unanswered questions. The city's sound study, for whatever reason, measured right on the property line, and then they went north across 44th Avenue and tested areas that had never been tested and that I believe are not even in Wheat Ridge's jurisdiction. They did not go down Gray Street. They did not measure sound at many of the properties, I'm sure, who are owned or resided in by the folks in this room today. And so we have this unknown, right, on this data, and we also have this unknown on the standard. And now what is, I think, very troubling on our side is the staff report has gone even further, and it says that compliance with the noise standard alone is not enough anyway. I mean, it's really now where we have a site-specific standard that's totally undefined, and it's essentially, it is keep reducing sound till we tell you we're satisfied. We don't know what the goals are. We don't know what the targets are. And we haven't had an opportunity to discuss the city's sound study or what the standard is or what's reasonable. So it's been a very difficult process for us. And I think that the next step and the step that has to happen before we take permit action is that the city needs to clarify what its standard is here. And that doesn't have to happen today, but I do think that that needs to be a point of emphasis moving forward here. And I think, it'll probably help with other issues the city is having with noise as well. So, without the clear standard, it makes mitigation very difficult. It's more expensive. It's unreliable. I think everybody in this room would benefit from just knowing what the standard is, what the goal is. And I think that clarity, like I said, is the essential next step. And I think, it's already been touched on, but we'll talk about it a little bit more, that this is also not a case where Autowash has ignored the concerns. They've spent, so much money, one, in reliance on the city's initial approvals, improving the site and building the car wash that the city authorized them to build, but then also spending money, time. They closed for almost 4 months at significant cost to the business. They really have shown that good faith, dedication to try to resolve this issue and be a good member of the community. So we just ask that you take that into consideration and on top of the fact that there has been no clear defined standard throughout this process, and we can all take a step back from this revocation or this SUP enforcement action and return to the process that we thought we were in and were participating in for 18 months and was producing measurable results. So with that, I'm going to invite Mr. Gleason and Ms. Gleason back up to talk about some of the specific improvements that we made.
So as Evan mentioned, closing for 4 months was not easy for us. We are not a private equity fund. We are not publicly funded. And so when we shut down, that cost us $40,000 a month out of our pocket, out of our savings for 4 months on the hope that we had some kind of tangible target that we could achieve if we went through the process. In good faith, we shut our site down because when I think council came back and told us we had one option: operate with no dryers, close your doors, or shut down. We'll revoke your permit, the threat that was made for us. And so with that, we decided, well, we can't shut down. We'll just take a pause. We'll take the hit. We'll shut our site down for 4 months while we secure a sound study and figure that out. Order the materials for a sound wall that had to be manufactured and shipped. Coordinate with our construction company to build the sound wall so that we could finally, hopefully, reopen, and as Evan talked about, under what we thought was the approval and what was the consensus with working with the city, that it was okayed. We were approved to open. Awesome. So we built a sound wall, $70,000 sound wall to work through that. We built it with the context of working with the sound study that it needed to be a certain density to actually reduce sound and be effective. The both sound study reports, our second report and the city's report with EDI, both of those show demonstrable sound reduction on the other side of the fence. So it works. It absolutely knocked it down by about 8 decibels, which is almost I think the 10 decibels is half sound reduction. That's pretty incredible. We've been told it's the quietest car wash site in the country right now. Not only did we do the fence, which we think also added beauty to the site and looks amazing, we added soundproofing to the inside of our bay doors. At a cost of about $3,500 to add these foam boards that we had to figure out what was not going to grow mildew, what was going to be okay in a wet environment, how are we going to attach them without ruining the doors, adding too much weight to the door to make the door too heavy to actually open. There's a lot of things that went into trying to figure out how can we mitigate the sound. And that was the first step we took, was actually putting sound dampening in the doors. We raced to get that done as fast as possible as soon as we started getting sound complaints. Unfortunately, it took like a month and a half to get it delivered once we started making that process. And the reason we're going through this way is like we are trying to like let council know that along this whole process, we have bent over backwards and jumped and asked how high or how loud at every single turn. We killed 25% of our revenue opportunity, ripping out one of our automatic bays to try to meet the sound study. Now, most of the time when you build a business and you have it approved with permits and you have bank financing and pro formas and expectations of how you're going to make money for that business has certain revenue metrics that it needs to make. And when you cut 25% off of its revenue capacity, you cut the site off at its knees. That site loses money every day. And we just have to keep it open to keep the business alive. So it's not for not a lack of sacrifice. Like, I don't think anyone else in this whole endeavor is losing, except us, Aaron and I, personally, financially. No one else is losing. So we cut that bay down. That ultimately will cost us a ton, hundreds of thousands of dollars over the life of the site. We heard the request, put some signage up. Our request, don't tell us what to say. The last thing I want to do, and I don't know if you've ever been to a car wash and you show up to a site and it looks like you should fear for your life because there's so many, don't do this, don't do that, better not do this, don't leave that there, don't do that. We've never operated any of our sites that way. You go look at our signage. We don't tell people, don't have attachments. We ask them, have these, leave them out. We try to take the positive approach to everything. Don't tell us what to say, please. We will make signage to do the right thing. The dryers, excuse me, really ingenious. One of our engineers that we're working with thought of a unique idea to reduce the effectiveness of our dryers by 25%. That would also reduce the sound dramatically. And it took our dryers from reading roughly outside the door about 10 feet, about 88 decibels, down to about 45 or 50. And what we found is that when those dryers go faster, they make a lot more noise and the pitch became higher and it sounded like an airplane was taking off. But once we put these VFDs in to reduce the volume of air and how fast those dryers can spin, it made them whisper quiet. You could barely hear them now outside of the property line. Thankfully, we just have to deal with customer complaints for that one because we don't dry the car as well, because we don't blow the air or the water off as well. I mean, we can deal with the complaints. That's why we have a call center to take care of those. So with that, I think the other thing I want to mention before we flip over to that, I mentioned earlier, this is our 26th location. We're in a lot of communities. We have a lot of properties that are right across the street from residential housing. Our very first two locations in the Stapleton neighborhood, now Central Park, and Northfield, are right across the street from houses. We don't get complaints. And those don't have any of the sound mitigations that we've jumped through to make this site the quietest car wash in America, right? Like, it really is pretty amazing. Oh, we didn't put the vacuum stuff in there. We dampened the vacuums and made those quieter too. Like, we put styrofoam in those, made them quieter. Anything we could do that we could think of to try to make it quieter, we did that. But on all of our other sites, we don't get noise complaints. And we run the same exact equipment across all 26 locations, the same doors open on the rest of our locations. And this is our one exception, and we have bent over backwards to try to make that work. Turn it over to Evan.
So quickly, just want to go over kind of where the data landed after this mitigation effort, which shows, why AutoWash did it is because it worked and it was items that they were able to test and generate measurable improvements in sound. So by mid-April of 2025, which is before installation of the sound wall, but after AutoWash had begun dampening doors and improving or installing the buffers on the dampeners on the vacuums, and some of those early early changes, city police reports start to reflect that the noise from the auto wash was barely audible and at 4355 Gray Street, which is the commercial property immediately to the south of the auto wash. And that we've entered those police reports as well as the video from that measurement day into the record, and would encourage council to review those materials. In November 2025, after the sound fence was installed, that's when Auto Wash had Wave go back out and remeasure sound, and I'll pull the table up here on the next slide, but generally showed that in the standard operating condition of two dryers, 2 bays running with 2 vacuums running, which is, pretty typical for a busy time at the Auto Wash, decibel levels were in the 47 to 53 range. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, in December of 2025, city staff indicated that they had code enforcement taking measurements and that they had no concerns with the results at that time. So this is the table from Wave's follow-up sound study, which reflects the data that I was just speaking about. So with 2 dryers running and 3 vacuums running is the top column there, which represents a pretty typical type of operating scenario. And then down at the bottom is all 4 dryers and 3 vacuums. With the operational changes that they made, there wouldn't be 4 dryers running at any point. And also having all 3 vacuums running is a very rare occurrence if it happens at all. And those levels are still right in and near or below the sound standards, both in state statute and the City of Wheat Ridge ordinance. On the right side here, we've put in a table, which is actually from the Wave sound study from the Silver Bullet shooting range, that just gives you a general idea of what those typical sounds are. And in that 40 to 50 range category is typical suburban area. Again, as Mr. Driesen's discussed, this is more of an urban environment where it is mixed use. It's been zoned as mixed use, and it's been that way since all relevant times. And then right above that is about a busy office. So those are just the comparable levels of noise that the Auto Wash is generating at this point based on the data that we have and the city's own sound study as well. So we would ask that, again, council look at this information, look at the data, and help us figure out, what the reasonableness standard is, what the goal is here, what the expectation is here. So, we can hopefully continue these efforts in a productive fashion without, having to deal with the ramifications of modifications to the special use permit or revocation of the special use permit. And with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague, John Peckler.
Thank you. I am the last new face you'll see for Auto Wash. There are no more of us to speak tonight. And so, as Evan said, John Peckler, outside counsel with Spencer Fain for Auto Wash, street address 1700 Lincoln Street, Suite 2000, Denver, Colorado 80203. And so, I'm going to just wrap it up and summarize. Everybody's done a great job of kind of going through all the information and data, and I'll sort of wrap it up here without trying to be too repetitive. And I think if I were just to sum this all up in one word, the problem here is fairness. I think everybody wants to see a solution that can work for all parties involved, the community, the small business, the city. I mean, nobody wants to get complaints. Nobody wants to feel like they have to make complaints. The city has plenty other things to do than to go and investigate and enforce complaints. But the process for getting to the final solution has to be fair, and it has to fit within the city's own code, the remedies and enforcement that it provides for, and it has to give due process, or a fancy way of saying fairness, to the holder of a protected property interest like Auto Wash, in its interest to have a car wash at this site and operate it due to the numerous city approvals that have gotten us here. So just to remind everyone, this is an enforcement hearing for an approved special use for the car wash. This is not a hearing to decide if a car wash should operate at this site under the discretion offered for making that initial determination on a special use. The city already granted a special use permit for this site to operate as a car wash.
the conditions that go with operating and performing that use are the written conditions that are included in the special use permit itself. There's 5 of them. We've talked about them. And so that's the standard. The standard is not revisiting this as if it were a fresh special use permit application and looking at it, in the first instance. We've already got the special use permit issued. And so due process and fairness require that the city follow its own process and procedure when it's enforcing the special use permit. So we've talked about that, and we've talked about the applicable statute or section of the city code. And the standard for enforcement is whether there's been a violation of a condition or stipulation or a material modification from a condition or stipulation. The 5 conditions of the special use permit, we've been on the screen a few times now. At no point in this process has the city alleged there's a violation of a condition or stipulation. And to the extent there's been allegations that there's a material modification, it's not a material modification of a condition or stipulation. The allegation is there's a material modification of an assumption that staff had that due to the architectural elevation drawings, the site would operate with the bay doors in the closed position. And you heard from the architect who processed the special use permit that they prepare those drawings, those architectural elevation drawings with bay doors in the closed position, not to make a representation about operational commitments or standards, but to show design elements and how something looks and how it fits with design criteria and things of that like. So to convert an assumption based on a drawing that was intended for a different purpose other than to fix the operational standards, it really is quite unfair because there's no notice to the applicant that that's something they have to do. Autowash never knew. It was assumed they would operate with the bay doors down until they got that first notice of violation in July of last year. And, as everyone has said, they went through 2 years of permitting with the city, a neighborhood meeting before the notice of violation was issued. There was a number of back and forth with staff. And it wasn't really until that notice of violation that it was put in writing and confirmed that the city was expecting Autowash to operate with the bay doors down. And that's too late in the process. The SUP had already been issued. The site plan was approved, the plat was approved, there was a building permit, a certificate of occupancy. Everything had been, going along without any kind of notice that this operational condition of bay doors down was actually a condition. And so, therefore, under the code and the process in the code, because we do not have a violation of a condition, a written condition in the permit, and we don't have a material modification of a condition from the permit, that's the end of what the city's process allows for. And so, city council should take, I believe it's option 2, or, let the special use permit remain as it is existing, unmodified and not revoked, because it's a tough decision and it's hard to say that, but that's what the code requires. And to the extent, we need to get into how do we do more with sound. I think it continues on in this process between staff and the community in Autowash, and we look for ways to reduce sound. As Evan noted, when we thought the standard was 65 dBAs during the day or decibels during the day, they got there. If the standard is something other than that, let's decide on what that standard is, and then let's work on a way to get there, because a lot of the mitigation that's been done didn't exist, or we didn't know about it until an engineer had an idea and thought of something, and then we were able to implement it. So by imposing conditions tonight, you take away the ability to find those kinds of solutions and work collaboratively. And I think from looking at a lot of emails that I've seen from neighbors and things, I think everybody was a little disappointed that this hearing got scheduled and no one was provided a copy of the city's final sound study and had an opportunity to discuss it before this hearing had already been scheduled. Because I think on all sides there's concerns with how that study was performed or the results or the analysis, and we were all hoping, I think, for more opportunity to be at the table and, you know, sort of collaborate and work on that. And instead, we're here. And once, you know, if city were to impose conditions, those conditions are now running with this special use permit, revisiting them, reopening them. Lauren, staff doesn't have the ability to do that. We'll be back in front of council trying to modify things. And I think that really ties everyone's hands, and it isn't, you know, there based on the record. So I may have jumped through a lot of these bullet points, so don't we need to cover it, but given that, you know, Ottawash's strong position is that the code and its requirements and the process are clear. There's no violation of a condition, no violation or material modification of a condition. Therefore, you know, the city council should leave the permit as is and take no action. But we wanted to talk about the conditions from, you know, the staff report, because they're in the staff report, and wanted to kind of give you Ottawash's perspective on some of these conditions. So I don't think staff isn't proposing to revoke the permit and shut the car wash down. The problem is, you know, putting all these conditions together in effect might lead them to have to close the car wash. There's a letter from an industry expert that's attached to our response, but basically operating car washes in warm temperatures with the bay door closed, it's difficult on equipment. It has a lot of impacts. The industry standard is not to do that because it's so humid in that environment that it really just destroys equipment, and you can't on a long-term basis do that and operate that way without constantly replacing parts and pieces. And that's why when it's warm enough, the bay doors are open. The bay doors close in colder climates like Colorado, not to, you know, trap sound or do anything like that. They close because it prevents the equipment from freezing in freezing or sub-freezing temperatures. So they're really there to protect the equipment and the things from extreme cold rather than anything else. And so if Ottawash were to have to operate under all of the conditions that are included in staff's recommendation, I think it may result in them having to, you know, really consider whether they could even operate this as a car wash at all, because it may be too costly in the long run to continually be replacing equipment. And I don't think anyone wants to see this property go back into a state of, you know, I don't want to say blight, but, you know, it wouldn't be used for its best purpose at that point. I don't think anyone's going to want to step in and try to revitalize it, given, you know, this history here. And so, you know, if city council really does want to look at conditions, we think we're missing some key pieces of data to be able to come up with conditions that might actually achieve the goals that we're all hoping for. It would be wise to sort of complete this data collection process, let everyone have some input, settle on a sound standard, and, you know, let experts or, you know, the Ottawash operators come up with ways that we can get to the agreed upon standard for noise, rather than just sort of picking a couple of conditions that we think might do the job, but we don't know because we haven't done all the data collection. And so we'll just jump into the conditions. So the first is the bay doors being closed during all wash and dry cycles. As I've said, this is a very difficult condition to live under, you know, in the summer months when it's warm and it's going to get really humid in there. You can't operate under these conditions on a long-term basis. So Ottawash's recommendation would be not to adopt this condition. I think where things currently are, Ottawash is voluntarily closing the south side bay doors, so the wash doors that are right next to the commercial vet property to the south. Ottawash closes those doors. Those are the doors you saw the picture with the foam padding in them. They close those during the wash to try to reduce sound going to the south. And so Ottawash would continue that voluntary closure of the south side bay wash doors with that sound dampening foam in them. On the hours cut, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., the 8 p.m., 7 a.m. is consistent with the city's noise ordinance state statute. 8 p.m., it doesn't line up with the city's noise ordinance or the state statute. It's, we're not aware of any reason for the 8 p.m. cutoff. Auto Wash's recommendation would be just to continue the current operating hours that are 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. and continue that on, Auto Wash does that voluntarily. I think the hope really is that mitigation efforts continue, new equipment gets developed or brought in, and maybe there is a scenario someday where all 4 bays can operate again in a reasonable and non-invasive way, and then maybe hours could be extended as well. On-site signage, you saw a picture, Auto Wash has put up some signs near the vacuums, and their preference there is not to mandate any single message, but let them come up with ways to sign or message to customers that they need to be mindful of the neighbors and respectful when using the car wash. They have a lot of experience with this, and they told me one time if we tried putting up "don't do this" signs and people do it out of spite, and I unfortunately believe them in my own experience with people. So the recommendation would be either say that they've already satisfied this condition with the signage that's been done, or we could give them the discretion to put up further signage if there's something else that needs to be done. But as far as I'm aware, there's never been a real issue with customers at the car wash causing noise. That's the problem. Oh wait, I pushed the wrong button. Okay. The next condition relates to trash cans and site maintenance. Until this latest notice of violation, Auto Wash was not aware that there was any concerns with trash. They do make a point of pride of keeping all their sites clean. They know what that prior car wash looked like and that it caused a lot of problems of its own. So they try to, keep a very cleanly and well maintained site. Happy to provide the city with contact information if they're receiving any complaints about overflowing trash cans, that they can reach out and have someone that will, remedy that in that day or the very next day. But we are not aware of any trash concerns, so this sort of caught us as a surprise to require this as a condition. Then the next condition is saying that the site has to comply with both state and local noise ordinances. Again, Auto Wash doesn't think this needs to be a condition because compliance with the city's code, its criminal code, and state law are always required. Nothing about a special use permit allows you to not comply with other parts of the city's code or state statute. Those are implicitly always required. So, this condition isn't necessary because these things are already required by their very nature. And then the last one was, this process of requiring sound monitoring on the city's request. And I think the real concern here on the Auto Wash side is the way that this language is written. It's very open-ended and it's unclear on what this means. And the fear would be every week they get a request to do a sound study, and it becomes very difficult to do this and comply with this requirement. And again, we don't know what the standards are. We don't really know what methodology is being asked. And in hiring sound consult, I'm sure the city has just experienced this when they got this. It's difficult to get sound consultants to come. You can only test when conditions are ideal. You can't have too much wind. It can't be too cold. There are a lot of things that have to happen, and it's expensive. And so, the fear is that this is just an open-ended requirement where the city could ask for sound studies constantly, and it would be very onerous and difficult to do. And then there's the other sort of issue, and it was raised at one point by the police department. The police department, when they enforce the sound ordinance, need to and want to rely on the data that's being collected by their officers with their equipment, because they bring that to municipal court and the prosecutor has to build a case on that data. And they're very reluctant, or they expressed concerns about relying on all this third-party data. And so if Auto Wash is being required to generate, many sound studies by third parties, and they're not the city, there's always going to be this question of, can we rely on this data? You're letting the fox guard the hen house. How could we do this? And so we would oppose adding this as a condition as well for those reasons. And with that, I will wrap it up. I thank you for your time tonight and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you to both the city and the Auto Wash for being judicious with their time. We will go to our testimony from the public. We will go online first. I will go ahead and call your name. When I call your name, you will have 4 minutes to speak. I will call the person who's up when you come up. Please go ahead and spell your last name for the record. I will call then the person who is on deck. So we will start online with Steve Peltier up and then Dylan Woner on deck.
Mr. Mayor, the only individual online is Kat Tarnoff.
Okay. Well, it looks like we do not have Steve Peltier on or Dylan Woner on, so we will go to Kat Tarnoff, who's our only speaker online.
Yes, hello. My name is Kat Tarnoff, Tarnoff, and I had prepared some statements to make. And listening to the preceding testimony, I kind of just threw it out and I'm just going to wing it. So I was involved with 4355 Gray Street. When Jan Passanelli opened the clinic, I worked with her. And the car wash opened later that year and was never an issue. And I know that it doesn't have to be an issue. And I am absolutely kind of astounded that about these proceedings, when it seems to me that the special use permit was granted with the condition that they don't have a detrimental effect. And that to me is blaringly apparent that it does have a detrimental effect. I understand that Auto Wash has made a significant investment in the property. However, it doesn't seem to me, according to what I've heard, that they are in compliance, because I state again, they are having detrimental effects, not only on the clinic. I feel so sorry for these homeowners and what is happening to their property values and their quality of life. This is not an inner city. I heard that mentioned. This is not an inner city. I assume that's probably why it's a special use permit and why there's different criteria. But the gentleman from Auto Wash said that no one had opined about sound during the process. It was never brought up. And that's completely unreasonable to expect these homeowners and the neighboring business to know in advance that they're supposed to speak up about that when they were told that it wasn't going to be an issue. However, I do think that the owners of the car wash probably did know that it was going to be an issue. This isn't their first rodeo. Auto Wash and the designers should have and likely did know in advance. And the trade show was mentioned. I still think that there's other solutions that can be done. I'm sorry if the modifications they've made haven't been effective enough. But when the attorney was discussing the starting point, I found it interesting. He seemed to be saying that, well, now we're stuck with these conditions of the special use permit, even though it really wasn't clear. And I'm wondering, is that just some kind of loophole? I found that very disappointing. And really, finally, they kept saying no one is losing. Holistic care is losing. The neighbors are losing. The property values, they're losing. The quality of life for all of these people are losing. And even changing the hours, and that's charming, but that absolutely has no effect for Jan. She's there during those operating hours, and she is the one right next door. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you. We will go to our speakers who have signed up in chambers. I will go ahead and call our first person, and then I'll call our second person for on deck. When you come up, please go ahead and just spell your last name, and then you will again have 4 minutes to speak. And again, watch the lights. As it's green, you'll have plenty of time. When it starts blinking, you have about a minute left, and when it goes to yellow, you have about 30 seconds. And then I do ask that you please go ahead and wrap it up when it turns red. I apologize if I butcher your last name. I'm doing my best. We have Lisa Fellman up, and then Leslie Baca on deck.
Good evening, members of the Wheat Ridge City Council. My name is Lisa Hamilton Fieldman, HAMILTON-Fieldman. I am here this evening in 3 capacities. First, as a Wheat Ridge resident who has owned my home at 7125 West 32nd Avenue since 1996. Second, with my animals as a client of Dr. Jan Fasinelli since 1990. And third, as an attorney and retired judge with whom a group of concerned Wheat Ridge citizens consulted about some of the legal aspects of the dispute with the Auto Wash facility that is the subject of tonight's hearing. Before I turn to the legal matters, one brief but I believe salient point. And that is that I know that the noise from the car wash is impacting Dr. Jan's business because I have a cat who has developed a seizure disorder that is triggered by loud or shrill noises. Because I'm concerned that the noise from the car wash might trigger him to have a seizure, I have no longer been willing to bring him to Dr. Jan's clinic for treatment, nor will I be able to bring him there to what used to be a peaceful space when the time comes to release him through euthanasia. Thus depriving him of Dr. Jan's excellent care and her of my business. I don't doubt that I am alone in this. With regard to the legal proceedings, I want to emphasize that I was retained to consult with my clients and to present the results of my research to them and to you. I am not entering my appearance on their behalf, as they have consistently expressed their desire and willingness to work with the city and Auto Wash to resolve this matter, and they do not want the situation to become more adversarial than it already is. That said, I have discussed with them especially the provisions of the Colorado Noise Abatement Act, and particularly the following sections. First, as to section 2512-103-1, the legislative declaration before 103.1.1 says that there is a need to establish statewide standards for noise level limits for various time periods and areas. Noise in excess of the limits provided in this article constitutes a public nuisance. Then, with respect to the specifics in this case, the standards that apply in this case have been discussed, but there is obviously some question about them, and I'm not quite sure why. The standards that have been discussed are 55 decibels from 7 to 7 in residential areas, and from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., 50 decibels. In commercial areas, 60 decibels, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and 55, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. However, in subsection 3 of 2512-103, which establishes those maximum noise levels, there is this: periodic, impulsive, or shrill noises shall be considered a public nuisance when such noises are at a sound level of 5 decibels less than those listed in subsection 1 of this section. And I would submit to you, if any of you have heard the sounds coming from the Auto Wash facility, that those noises could be considered to be periodic, impulsive, and shrill, and therefore that the decibel levels set forth in the standards should be lowered by 5. Then, with respect to the applicability, it is not clear to me why those standards, both the time and the decibel levels, have not, it was, to me, it was clear to Auto Wash from the very beginning. Their architectural standards told them that they needed to comply with state standards. They are aware of the state standards. There is a section in the state standards, that is 2512-108, that says, except as provided in a couple of sections that provide for some exceptions.
Thank you. Go ahead and wrap it up, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
This article shall not be construed to preempt or limit the authority of any municipality to adopt standards that are no less restrictive than the provisions of this article. I would close with telling you that there is a case, Hobbs versus the City of Salida, in which the Colorado Supreme Court in 2025 ruled that a municipality cannot exempt a facility or an activity from those standards by use of a special use permit.
Thank you. We have Leslie Baca up and Scott Galloway on deck.
Hi, my name is Leslie Baca. Last name is spelled B-A-C-A. Hello, Wheat Ridge City Council. Thank you so much for giving your attention to this matter. I don't live in Wheat Ridge, but I live in an adjacent neighborhood about 8 minutes from the car wash in Denver. And I've been a client of Dr. Jan Fasinelli as my primary veterinarian for 26 years. She's that good. And there isn't another veterinarian with her specialty close by. I have brought all of my family pets to her over the last 26 years. Mention was made of the previous car wash that was there, and I used to take my mini blinds down, and I would go over there and hook them up on their walls and wash them down because it was a really quick and easy way to take care of those. And I never saw a homeless person at the previous car wash. It was a humble wash. It wasn't new and modern, but I would suggest maybe City Council take a look at police records because I always felt safe at the previous car wash. I've brought my one of my current pets, a cat, to Dr. Fasinelli. I think it's been like 5 times in the past year. He's pretty sick. And it is so nerve-wracking when that car wash sounds go off. It sets the cat off, it sets me off, although I'm trying to be calm. And, you know, when you've had to take your animal to emergency rooms 4 times, and then you're doing follow-up with your primary veterinarian, and she's trying to take a blood sample, and that car wash goes off, those dryers, it can't be done. And so it's cost me money because I'm like getting tests done, and we can't get a sterile sample, so I'm trying to get a sample from him at home to run, $400 worth of lab work. And it has to be done. I don't want to end up with my cat losing his life. And I'm just really hoping that there is a way to mitigate the sound because it is impacting my quality of life for my animals and my veterinarian's quality of life in what was once a very peaceful, well-run clinic. And I can't imagine what it's done for the neighbors to the south of them. And so I hope that things can be mitigated, and if they can't, I would say revoke the license. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. We have Scott Galloway and then Brett Lilly on deck.
Good evening, Council. My name's Scott Galloway, Galloway. I live 714 feet south of the car wash on Gray Street. On occasion, I've been outside on my property and have heard the car wash dryers running. That's basically a block away, and I have to say, the old car wash, I never had that issue. I never heard anything. I want to say something here something that I read in reference to a memorandum dated July 16th, 2024 from the city of Wheat Ridge. I would like to point out that the special use permit was approved based on several reasons, one of which is, and I quote, "The special use will not create or contribute to blight in the neighborhood by virtue of physical or operational characteristics." I've lived on Gray Street for 33 years now, and this, I will say, is the first negative impact on our neighborhood I have experienced. Could you imagine trying to sell your home living next to a loud car wash? It's far worse living there 24 hours a day than just visiting for a few minutes a day, each day. Look, I'm not suggesting that the car wash close. I think there's things that they can do. I think that they can close the doors. I think operating hours, 7 to 8, 7 to 7 is even better. Why not? We could do that. I believe that neighborhoods have the right to defend themselves from businesses and even other neighbors that negatively impact their neighborhood. The place we live every single day, the place that we have a vested interest. That's all I have to say. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Brett Lilly is up, and then Carrie Cooper on deck.
Hi. My name is Brett Lilly. I'm a Wheat Ridge resident. I live right down the street by Park. So, lovely place to live. I've got a few points I want to make. The first is it seems to me the fairness argument that they're trying to make is that because we didn't know or think noise was going to be a problem at the design process, it's a little late to try to make it a problem of ours now. But it seems that the reality is, having read through all the 83 or 84 matters in the record, that it really is disruptive. And I think that regardless of the intent and regardless of the process, what's happening right now is really what the council needs to focus on. And so with that, I'd like to make 4 points. The first is that whatever the sound studies may say, the noise is still very disruptive. I've been a long-term client of Dr. Fasanelli, and I was just there a couple weeks ago, and it spooked my cat bad. Like, I got scratches and it made me bleed. So the point that was made earlier is that it's not just a constant background noise. There's a lot of peaks and variations. And so when that variation is going on, I think that it creates a much different nuisance. The second point I want to make is that there are car washes all over town. There's only one, Jan Fasanelli, and the residents that live there only have one home. And reading all the comments, I really had to wonder how many of the pro car wash comments were made from actual citizens of Wheat Ridge. I think it's the people who live and work in Wheat Ridge that vote for this city council. Those are the people and the concerns that this council has to be thinking about that matters, not somebody coming from across town because they think it's a convenient car wash on their way home from work. So I would say to the residents from Denver or Edgewater that you can go find a car wash in your own backyard. It doesn't need to create a problem in our backyard. And I think the third point I want to make is that it seems to me that if you look at, there's not only the 5 conditions on the permit, but there's the 9 factual findings up above it. And it feels very clear to me that the car wash has violated the spirit of those 9 findings of fact on the special use permit. And it was kind of sold as it wouldn't be disruptive, but the reality is that it's really noisy and it's really a nuisance. And if that's true, then it's not being properly designed and maintained. And I think that the spirit of the special use permit has to be considered along with what they might identify as the sort of technical lawyer 5 conditions. And so the argument about the 5 conditions not being ignored surely violates the spirit of what I think the idea was, is that this wasn't supposed to be disruptive to the neighborhood. And we shouldn't be in a position where just because they got their foot in the door, the city council shouldn't feel like now you have to open it wide open. I think getting their foot in the door means that they still have to properly maintain it so that it's not a nuisance for the rest of the community. They try to call this fairness and due process, but I think the reality is at the end of the day that no business has a right to be a nuisance to all the surrounding businesses in the neighborhood. And I can't see that there's a vested property right if the business fails to live up to the spirit and the letter of the representations of the special use process. I don't think anybody here wants to villainize or disparage the car wash. It does sound like they have tried in good faith, but the priority has to be the residents who are there first. They're the people who live there. They shouldn't have to sacrifice their entire quality of life in the name of progress. And so I would suggest that the council revoke the permit. It sounds like there's been a lot of efforts at mitigation, and it's not ever clear that they're going to work. If you're not going to revoke the permit, I think you need to make very clear and specific recommendations that have to be met very quickly. And if they're not, then the permit should be revoked in those instances. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Carrie Cooper up, and then Jan Fancinelli on deck.
Good evening. My name is Cassandra Cooper, C-O-O-P-E-R. I want to say thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm speaking in support of requiring the auto wash to implement significantly increased and verifiable sound mitigation measures in order to avoid suspension or possible revocation of their special use permit. I want to be clear that I'm not here because I oppose local business or economic developments. Businesses are an important part of our community. However, businesses that operate under a special use permit also carry an added responsibility to ensure their operations remain compatible with surrounding properties and do not create ongoing negative impacts for nearby residents and businesses. Unfortunately, it appears that noise impacts associated with this facility have continued despite previous mitigation attempts. Neighbors, surrounding businesses, and clients visiting nearby offices have repeatedly described disruptive sound levels coming from dryers, vacuums, and operational activity. These concerns have persisted long enough that they can no longer be viewed as temporary growing pains or isolated complaints. As a client of Dr. Jan, veterinary practice nearby, I've personally experienced the excessive noise while visiting the area. It's disruptive not only for people, but for animals already under stress during veterinary appointments. A veterinary office should remain calm and controlled in environments, and the ongoing noise from this operation directly undermines that. I believe the city has an obligation to uphold the standards tied to special use permits. If a business is unable to operate within acceptable sound limits without negatively affecting neighboring properties, then stronger enforcement measures are appropriate. At the same time, I believe the business should be given a final opportunity to correct these issues through meaningful action. I encourage the council to require enhanced sound mitigation measures that are independently verified and enforceable, including ongoing monitoring and demonstrated compliance over a sustained period of time. This is not about punishing a business. It is about accountability, compatibility, and protecting the quality of life for the surrounding community. If Auto Wash can successfully implement effective mitigation and consistently operate within acceptable standards, then they should be allowed to continue operating. But if these issues persist despite repeated opportunities to resolve them, the city must be prepared to suspend or revoke the special use permit. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. We'll go to Jan Fasinelli up, and then Marianne Kirchhoff on deck.
Good evening. I'm Jan Fasinelli, and I live at 5015 Raleigh Street, and my veterinary practice is at 4355 Gray Street. I'm going to comments for a second. Dennis and Aaron, I am so sorry to meet you under these circumstances. In hindsight, I wish I could have invited you over so you could have personally experienced what I was experiencing, and maybe all of this whole year would have been different. You could have heard and then made adjustments based on what you were hearing and experiencing like I was. So my comments are, good evening, council and city staff. I want to thank you for giving me yet another, and hopefully this is the last opportunity to speak to you tonight. I want to thank you for all your guidance over the last year and a half and the issues we're discussing. And to the Auto Wash owners, staff, and patrons, as a member of the small yet vocal group of neighbors who have been negatively impacted by the noise from the car wash since February of 25, I want to assure you that it was never my intent to see you closed.
On January 16th to 24, the city of Wheat Ridge approved a special use permit for auto wash based on 9 reasons, and I'm here to discuss 1 and 2. Reason 1 was a special use permit will not have a detrimental effect on the general health, welfare, safety, or inconvenience of persons residing or working in the neighborhood. I can attest to you that the noise from the car wash has definitely had a detrimental effect on my health, my welfare, my quality of life, and the quality of my business. Reason 2 states in the memorandum that the special use will not create or contribute to blight in the neighborhood by virtue of physical or operational characteristics. Noise blight is called noise pollution and refers to unwanted, disruptive, or harmful environmental sounds that negatively impact health and quality of life. It has been linked to chronic stress, sleep disturbance, increased blood pressure, mood changes, and cardiovascular disease, as well as property devaluation. This car wash contributes to the noise blight by the shrill, continuous, periodic, sudden, and impulsive noise. Yes, it has changed somewhat with all the changes, and it is better. In this winter, when the doors were down, it was not a problem. During the neighborhood meeting, the application was submitted. We were told that there wouldn't be any big changes from what it was. It'd be an improvement, but none of us had any experience. The car wash bay before with the blower wasn't like the ones we experienced when they first opened. Once the car wash opens, it was immediately noticeable just how disruptive and loud the noise was. And now that I understand they could turn them down, I can see why that's much better. I would like to see an authentic sound fence built. I would like one that's the sound material like the city puts against the interstate, you know, the one that they built on 38th and Wadsworth. Something, I don't care if I've lost my vision of the car wash, you know, if it's another 4 feet high, that would be fine. If they can't keep the doors down, I've read that there are solutions with dampness, and there are people that make a living solving pollution, you know, problems in car washes. So that's an option. We were here first. The previous car wash did not disturb our peace of mind or affect our quality of life. There are laws in Colorado, such as coming to nuisance, which I've learned about. We didn't build next to the car wash. The car wash built next to us. And now we have problems with that noise. And I do believe it's solvable. I want it solved. I'm not into shutting down anybody's business. And if it takes, in my mind, if it takes putting this aside for a couple weeks, I don't know how you can all make this decision in the next couple hours. This affects so much, but a lot has come to light today, and I'm wanting to work with you. The new members on the council, if you could hear what we heard before, that would really affect you. I think you would know. And I
Thank
have
you.
gone out to my fence when I hear the noise coming in. We had a meeting.
Thank you. Go ahead and please
last
wrap it
night.
up.
Okay, I'll close up. The noise is still coming through my windows. During my exams, I can't keep my windows open because the noise comes through, and it comes all the time. Thank you for your time, and I hope we won't have to do this again.
Thank you. We will go to Mary Ann Kirchhoff and then Mike Jostin on deck. Okay. Then we'll go to, thank you, Mike Jostin and then Sandy Sands on deck.
My name is Mike Jostin, Jostn. I live at 4360 Gray Street with my wife, Gretchen. We bought our house 11 years ago knowing there's a self-service car wash across the street, and we never had any issues with that in the 8-9 years we're dealing with that. And then with the auto wash coming in, the noise came in as well, where it was real bad at first, where we had to refigure our living situation in our home. We had to keep our windows closed on sunny days. It was pretty intense living situations. With that being said, I know Auto Wash has made some improvements on it, and it has gotten better. But I don't believe we're quite there yet, and we were hoping a simple solution was closing the doors, the north-facing doors, but it sounds like that's not going to happen. I don't know if there's another sound wall that can be built. I know there's a lot of money involved in all this, but the sound just reflects off the bank across the street, the pawn shop next door, and it just comes back at the neighbors. And that's what's affecting all of us. So hopefully we can come to a solution that makes both parties happy. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go Sandy Sands next, and then Dennis Driesen on deck.
Hello. My name is Sandra Sands, last name spelled S-A-N-D-S. I'm a resident of Wheat Ridge. I've lived at 4300 Gray Street for the last 15 years. I'm a voter. I'm a taxpayer. I'm a retired state employee, worked as a social worker for the state of Colorado. I live 7 houses away from the car wash on the east side of the street. In the evenings, when I like to look at my iPad and watch little shows out on my front porch, the car wash has interfered. So I go inside. We have pot shops on 44th. We have all kinds of different retail shops that bring an element of people. I don't judge. It's everybody. It's the whole world. We got to live together. We're not complaining about any of them. They've come in, they've updated their business as best they can afford, and it looks better, but they haven't interfered on my way of life, on my peace of mind, on my safety. I was asked to speak to the special use permit and some of the problems, and one of the difficulties we found was the traffic congestion right around the car wash. Under the special use permit, one of the things that was indicated that traffic congestion or applied, that sort of thing, could not interfere. Well, I have experienced personally, because I turn onto Gray from 44th several times a week when I'm running errands, and because they have narrowed the intersection, bringing a nice sidewalk out there, right, they improved that area so you can walk with your animals safely because there's a nice sidewalk, gutter, curb. However, it's extended far enough into the intersection that has created a safety issue. So when I'm slowing down to turn off of 44th headed east onto Gray, I make sure to add my signal light. I make sure and give plenty of time to signal for that. And then there's also buses coming. One of the things that I've experienced is that it's unsafe because people are piling up behind me because I have to take extra time to pull out and around that extension. It's about a 6-foot extension from the car wash's nice sidewalk and curb, and so it cut down the street access. It narrowed it considerably. I've been worried about being rear-ended, and so I wanted to speak to that traffic congestion. The other thing is that many of you are aware, I'm sure, that Randall Park is right next door to me. I'm at 4300 Gray. Randall Park is right across the street. There are children, families, dogs, baseball games, everything going on constantly, even in the sub-nice weather. And yet I've seen an increase in traffic, people speeding, stop signs being ran, and it's not just because of the car wash. But I do think that when somebody, the best access from 44th into the car wash takes a turn right into the car wash and then they exit out onto Gray Street, either to the left and try to rejoin 44th, or they go up Gray Street. So I just want, one of the other items that was listed on the special use permit was the fact that are there any parks or facilities or safe family areas, that sort of thing, being impacted negatively. And I don't think it's to a huge degree. I'm not trying to overstate or be dramatic about anything. I do think, though, that with the park right there and additional businesses that have high volume come and go is going to affect safety for our street and for the park. And that's all I wanted to say. I want to appreciate the council listening to our points again several times. And I want to support Dr. Vanfinelli and saying to the owners, Our neighborhood, we're not gripers. We look out for each other, we help each other. We go and mow somebody's lawn or clear their sidewalk when it's
Thank you.
and we are not troublemakers. We don't have it out for you guys, and we don't want to close anybody down. We just would like to be able to sit out on the front porch and enjoy the music on the iPad or whatever. I would prefer you
Thank
be
you.
there and we work it out together than animosity and strife. Thank you.
Thank you. See, the next few people we've had speak tonight, so I'm just going to kind of run through. Mr. Driza, would you like to speak again? Okay. Mr. Peckler, would you like to speak again? No. Okay. Mr. Driza, would you like to speak again? No. Mr. Kirschman, no. Okay. And then Mr. Singleton, no. Okay. Thank you. Then we will go to Greg Primavera, and then Gretchen Jostin on deck.
Greg Primavera, Primavera. And I just want to say that with the old car wash, there was only one bay, and I've been in this house for 46 years. I had no problem with it. Now there's three, and the noise is deafening sometimes, and I have people come over, and they say, "What is that noise? Sounds like an airplane." So no, that's the car wash. It just keeps on going, 3 bays at a time. And we had a letter sent from us by the Planning Commission, and we had a Zoom meeting. And we asked about the noise on there, and if there was going to be any traffic coming in from Gray Street. "Oh, no, don't worry about it. It's all going to go north." Well, yeah, it goes north and then it comes back south. And if it's windy, you can really hear it. And there was no do not enter signs on there. They're gone. They're taken away. And, you know, us being saying that we're, you know, the minority people coming, or, you know, the people coming in and saying this and saying that. Yeah, we live here. We have been here. We did not invade your property. You invaded our property. And if there's going to be some way we can get rid of not get rid of the noise, keep it down. I have nothing against the car wash. Don't like the traffic, don't like the noise. But can we do something with the noise, with the traffic, and have something going on? He wanted to be part of the community. Did they ever talk to us? No. Why are we here? Because no one talked to us. We wanted something done, but now we are being blamed for this. No, we're not. You came into our neighborhood, and it's just affecting all of us. And I just hope something can be done where we can get something where it's not as loud. And one other thing about the sidewalk out there. If there's a fire truck that has to come down that road, how's it going to get down there? You can't even make that right-hand turn in there if you're headed east. You come over the curb, and why is it there? I have no idea. If there's someone standing, or a handicapped person standing in that sidewalk, they could be hit. Something could happen. It just was a poorly designed whole thing. Everything was just poorly designed. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Gretchen Jostin and then Chris Neitzold on deck.
Hi, my name is Gretchen Jostin. I live at 4360 Gray Street. I just have some documents for you. As everyone else has explained, we're really just trying to get some solutions to the problem. When this happened and we knew you guys were going to hear about this, I reached out to Gleam Car Wash, which is the closest in proximity. That's also located very close to a residential neighborhood. Their owner very kindly responded back to me with what her experience was, which is what's included in your packet there. What her experience was, how she mitigated the problems, how she worked with the community. She signed a good neighbor agreement, the first good neighbor agreement that had ever been signed. And she worked with the community. She was there beforehand, before building, not looking at it as something that needed to be fixed after the fact. Autowash owns 26 locations. This is not their first location. We shouldn't be the ones trying to figure out how to mitigate this noise. She also, at her own expense, provided her sound attenuation expert to provide some suggestions outside of the doors being down. Everything in your packet, he said, can be done for under $40,000. He was quite flabbergasted at the pricing that was given for the fence that was up, which is a plywood fence with the same material that wraps around their building. It's not a sound fence. So if you wanted to flip through that, he suggests lots of options. I'm happy to share this with the Autowash team. Everything from filling in the wall that's currently there, not providing any kind of mitigation, with felt that could be woven through the grating to block noise. Acoustic block mounted wall on the walls, ceilings, doors, to make the doors that are currently open, the size of them smaller. He says this wall, the pawn shop wall, is reflecting sound back toward the neighborhood. An agreement could be made to make sound attenuation applied, large fabric mural, sound paint, stucco, other options. He says there's no blower inlet protection on the dryers, no sound attenuation on the north walls, which are the walls we're asking to be closed. Sound baffles that are used around pools and large gymnasiums. This is what they use in Gleam. I went over that one. Acoustic sound curtains, a blower inlet silencer. I've become a very knowledgeable in car wash dampening equipment because it affects my life so much. I've driven around to other car washes, 2 others that are located in Arvada. This is Gleam's sound wall. It's a sound wall, not a fence, that was supposed to be constructed per their site design plan in 2022. The city staff told them that they needed to put a fence along the pawn shop property line and the current property line if there wasn't one there. It didn't happen, so now it's all of a sudden a savior to the problem. This is another company called Colorado Auto Wash. This is a sound wall. This is a sound wall. This is on Sheridan Boulevard. This is Whistle Car Wash. This is a sound wall, an enclosure. So we're asking simply for solutions that can fix the problem. They're focusing on the legality of it and not focusing on the impact that they're having on us.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have everything else written. Appreciate you.
Thank you. We'll go to Chris Neitzold, and then my understanding is that Dylan Woner is online now, so we'll go back to him after Chris.
Hi, my name's Chris Neitzold. I live at 4350 Gray Street. Mayor, members of City Council, I, like many who are speaking, are a current small business owner. Not here, but still back in the state that I came from in Virginia. I live next to Lakeside Auto Wash. I'm going to use my 4 minutes to do something Auto Wash's attorneys, Spencer and Fain, cannot do. Speak to you as someone who has actually lived through this, backed by the owner's own words, his own customer's testimony, and the law. I want to address Spencer Fain's legal arguments directly from their 335-page argument because this council deserves to hear the other side. Spencer Fain will tell you that none of the 5 written SUP special use permit conditions were technically violated. They are correct that on the condition that the conditions don't explicitly mention closed doors or decibel limits, but that argument deliberately ignores what this council actually approved. Condition number 1 of the special permit requires operations be consistent with representations depicted in the applicable materials. The city's own packet states that clearly, and I quote, "Noise standards alone do not determine whether a special use permit remains appropriate. The special use permit criteria are broader than the 5 written conditions, and this use has failed those criteria catastrophically." Spencer Fain will invoke vested rights and threaten a takings claim. Here's the legal reality. Vested rights under Wheat Ridge Code Section 26-121 require lawful conduct and justifiable reliance. You cannot claim vested rights in an operation that has violated noise standards from its opening. A business that opens illegally does not earn constitutional protection by staying open long enough. Spencer Fain and Hover Architecture will tell you that the architectural elevations showing closed doors were just standard practice for aesthetic review and not meant to do anything operational. Their own architect put that in writing. But here's what that argument actually concedes: that this neighborhood was shown those drawings of an enclosed facility and was never told that those drawings were meaningless. We are not subject matter experts. No neighbor objected during the commitment period because we believed what we were shown. The doors were going to be down. The legal term is detrimental reliance. We relied on those representations in good faith. And condition 1 exists precisely to protect that reliance. If Spencer Fain's interpretation prevails, no Wheat Ridge neighbor can ever trust an architectural drawing submitted with a permit application again. Now, Spencer Fain will also tell you that the noise standard kept changing, creating a due process. The Supreme Court, Colorado Supreme Court answered that argument unanimously 8 months ago in Hobbs v. City of Salida. The court held that CRS 25-12-103 establishes blinding statewide noise limits that no local process can waive or permit around. Those violations constitute a public nuisance as a matter of state law. The standard isn't shifting. It never was. State law is always applied. Under the law, 55 decibels at residential properties. Your own police recorded 85.4. It's in that document. Decibels at this facility. That's not a close call. Finding number 9. The proposed special use promotes goals and outcomes from the city's comprehensive plan. I'm confident your comprehensive plan did not contain a goal that reads, trap customers in their cars on public streets, destroy the quiet enjoyment of the adjacent homeowners, and operate in flagrant violation of Colorado noise law. While the owner rallies supporters online to pressure the city council or threatening the city of Wheat Ridge with a $5.5 million lawsuit. Changing this permit promotes your comprehensive plan. Allowing this to continue does not.
Thank you.
I'll close with this. When Dennis and Aaron chose where to live, they didn't choose a house next to one of their own car washes. They chose a house a third of a mile away, tucked safely in the middle of a residential neighborhood, fully insulated from industrial noise. They are asking this council to make our permanent reality. They made their choice about what it's like to live next to this business. Modify the special use conditions with enforceable actions you haven't done up until this point and hold them accountable. It's clear Auto Wash's 6 proposed suggestions on those conditions by their council were consistently no action. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We will go back to our Zoom and go back to Dylan Warner.
Mr. Mayor, he's no longer
Oh.
online.
Okay. Well, that is all the people we have signed up to speak. We will go ahead and take a recess right now. We'll look at a 10-minute recess. So we will be back at 9 o'clock, so 9 p.m. Thank you. Thank you. Please take your seats. We'll come back to order. We just wrapped up our public testimony, so we will go back to the city community development team for their wrap-up comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief. The city's development code, as you know, is designed to balance economic activity and neighborhood compatibility. And at the end of the day, a special use permit is not a one-time entitlement disconnected from future operations. It was approved based on the provided application materials and the assertion that there would not be impacts. When actual operations have an impact on the real world, the city has an obligation to evaluate a special use. The code does not give me the ability to require site improvements to mitigate impacts. Voluntary changes have not sufficiently mitigated impacts. Enforcement is not a permanent management strategy. The expectation is that a use operates in a compatible way and does not require continual monitoring by the city. The city's role is also not to design operational solutions for a business. After more than a year, concerns have persisted. The car wash does not comply with noise limits under all conditions. Professional mediation was offered and declined. I believe additional conditions are necessary to provide clarity and to ensure that ongoing operations align with the SUP criteria and the original application. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll go to Auto Wash for their concluding remarks.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight, and thank you for listening. And if we could get a copy of the materials that were given to the clerk here, we'd love to take a look at that and those various different, potential mitigation measures. Because I think I just want to sort of conclude by saying, we think the code here is clear, and it leads to a result that forces everybody back to the table to negotiate further and figure out how to reduce the impacts. And I think we heard a lot of testimony about the levels of sound being equivalent to an airplane jet or things like that. And a lot of studies have been done, and I don't think we're seeing that level of reading in any of the data that's been collected. And sound is subjective, and it impacts people differently. And it is something that's very serious and near and dear to people's hearts, and it has an effect on people. But the data isn't showing the sound equivalent to a jet engine, and it is showing that sound is getting quieter and things are improving, and maybe there's more opportunity here to mitigate further and go lower. But we think that cutting off this process that's been going on for the last 18 months now and imposing the 5 or 6 conditions we have, we think that's a missed opportunity because we don't know if those conditions are going to work and get to the standard for sound. And we've talked a lot about, does the state statute apply? Does the city's code apply? We're not sure which applies. The state statute provides a private right of action to counties and citizens. It's not enforced by Wheat Ridge. Wheat Ridge has a noise ordinance, which is why it has it, so it can enforce its own noise ordinance. Denver, right across the street, has a noise ordinance with sound limits that match those that are in Table A of the Wheat Ridge Code. It's the same dBA levels and does the same analysis of what is the generating property, what is the receptor property, and varying limits apply. And they're the same as in Table A of the Wheat Ridge Code, which are different from the state statute. And so I think a real comprehensive understanding of what is the end goal will help us find a way to get there. And I think we need an agreement on that to chart the path to get there. And someone brought up the Gleam car wash as an example. I believe they submitted a letter. I hope it's in your materials. I hope you get a chance to look at it. The Gleam experience was one where they tried really hard to have a neighborhood agreement, do a lot of public outreach even when they weren't required. It sounds like they ended up having to terminate that neighborhood agreement because it wasn't working. Again, sound is really difficult to deal with. It's somewhat difficult to really say how one person will perceive 60 decibels versus the other. We may all feel a little bit differently about it. And so, Gleam ultimately ended up coming to a solution, but it was because they all agreed Denver's noise ordinance was the end goal. And I think Gleam, from the letter they submitted, I believe that they got there. So once they got to Denver's noise ordinance, they had done what they needed to do. And I think we're just a little unclear on what that end goal is right now. And so I just want to say, you know, if we take action tonight to adopt the conditions that are being proposed, we lock those conditions in. We don't have any other opportunity to evaluate the mitigation measures that are proposed here. And we're stuck with what we've done tonight. And I think, you know, we don't need to just ignore this problem. I think when we say no action, we're not saying no action to further mitigate sound. We're saying, let's not memorialize a set of conditions on a special use permit that will be permanent for this use. Let's leave that how it is now, and then let's continue this process to figure out what works and how to actually get to a peaceful resolution for the neighbors. I heard a lot of people say tonight they don't want to feel like they're the bad guys for shutting down a business, and I don't think, you know, the business wants to paint them as the bad guys either. We want to work together. We think there's an opportunity here. And so I think no action really means no permanent conditions on the SUP, but let's continue the engagement. Let's collect some more data, and let's evaluate these, you know, different opportunities that have been presented to council. We haven't received this or looked at it, so we don't know what might work or what could work. And so, you know, we're just asking to have that opportunity to reach a workable solution for the whole community. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we will now go to questions from council. Councilors, I'll recognize you in the order you raise your hands. I just want to make a note that once we're through the questioning portions and I close that part, there will be no further questions allowed of either the auto wash or the city presenters. So do we have questions from council? Councilor Okada.
Thank you, Mayor. I got a question for the city regarding the trash concern that's in the recommendation for the amended special use permit. What led the city to make that recommendation for that there?
It was a lesser impact, but an impact that has been observed periodically over the last couple of months, that the trash receptacles at the vacuum stations were periodically not large enough to contain all of the trash. So not as big of an issue as some of the other concerns that you've heard tonight, but one that, if we'll be adding conditions, could address the site maintenance expectations.
Thank you. The city offered to pay for mediation. That I imagine that offer was made to the business, and the business only.
It was offered to both the neighborhood and to the business. We reach out to two representatives in the neighborhood.
Was the offer rejected by all parties it was offered to?
It was essentially, yes. It was not accepted by either party.
Thank you. I do have a question for the auto wash as well. The removal of the fourth bay. What was the rationale? Could I get details about the process for the decision to remove the fourth bay?
Yeah, so based on the sound study that we did to get empirical data, it showed that the sound, if we did the study with all bays running, 3 bays running, 2 bays running, 1 bay running, and through that sound study, it showed that there was excess sound on 4360 Gray Street with that 4th bay running. But when we only had the 3 bays running and we shut off that 1 bay, it showed that we met the standard, at least the sound standard of what we were trying to hit at the time. And so for us, it made sense. It's like, okay, well, if we need to be open, we can't be closed. We can't cut off our nose to spite our face. Let's close 1 bay to meet that standard and try to get that done. So we closed that bay down so that it would be the one closest to the neighbors and try to eliminate the sound.
Thank you. That gets me the information I'm looking for. Just for my clarity on that, that's the same sound study that was making the recommendation about the sound wall. Is that correct?
No, this was the study that was done after the sound wall had been installed to evaluate, you know, the effectiveness of the sound wall. And so that it was then that they decided, you know, to be sure in the worst case scenario is how that was framed, with 3 bays going, the doors open, the dryers running, all the vacuums on for, I think it was like a period of 5 minutes of that, because noise from 44th goes up and down. It was like a continuous 5-minute dryers on, doors open, and that's how they got to that number.
Thank you. That does raise another question for me, and this might be my misunderstanding from the materials in the presentation. So apologies, this might be only for my benefit. But does that mean that Autowash did multiple sound studies?
Yes, that's correct. There were two.
Two. Cool.
One in, I believe, over the summer that concluded with the sound fence recommendation, and then a second to evaluate the efficacy of that fence.
Okay. Thank you. That's all my questions for now.
Thank you. We'll go to Councilor Quinn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Lauren, the city, I guess I should say, did the car wash violate the noise ordinance?
Yes, there have been some measurements over the past year that have violated the noise ordinance.
Okay, and can you tell me what that ordinance is as far as, and maybe our attorney needs to jump in here, but what those decibels are, what the specifics of that is?
Sure. So the noise ordinance landscape is complicated, as you've heard tonight, not because the standards are difficult to understand, but because it is layered. So there is state statute that establishes decibel limits and has a time frame of 7 to 7. There are decibel limits in the city's code, and there's also a reasonableness standard in the city code. And so it's understandable why that feels confusing because it is layered. But the decibel limits, I can pull them up in a moment. They are different based on residential or commercial. I'm seeing somebody else has them pulled up.
Yeah, I have them. In the city's code, the decibel levels only refer to industrial properties. So that's not the case here. For residential and commercial properties, the reasonable standard applies. But the state's statute, as mentioned several times tonight, is a statewide, noise is a statewide concern according to state. So the state statute overrides the city's code. And those decibel levels have been reported tonight. So residential, it's 55 during the daytime, 50 at night. Commercial, 60 during the daytime, 55 at night.
Thanks. City Manager Goff. I was going to ask, how does that Supreme Court decision pertain here? But I think you kind of
It's a little nuanced. It's a little different. The Supreme Court case was about outdoor amplified permit that the city of Salida provided to a business. That's different here. We did not provide an outdoor amplified sound permit. We provided a special use permit. In my opinion, the Supreme Court case does not apply here, but.
Sorry. It doesn't technically apply here because it's on a different set of facts as just discussed by Manager Gall. But I think most municipal practitioners read it and form the belief that the next case that will come down will certainly hold that the statewide noise ordinances are trump conflicting local enactments. So the state standards apply. There's never been reason to think that the state standards don't apply.
perfect. Thank you. Yes. Then I have one more. In the packet we had, there were two sound studies done by two different firms. And they seem to be quite opposite each other. Am I thinking right? I mean, I shouldn't say opposite, but the one sound study talked about the wall between the veterinarian, how it was too short, was made of insufficient materials. I work construction for a living, and I would happen to agree with that. Is it just two different entities and that's what we got, or is this driven by who paid for it?
I'm happy to clarify that. So when the city initially asked Autowash to voluntarily pursue sound measurements, they hired Wave Engineering. So Wave Engineering completed a first study in the summertime and then completed a second study after the fence was installed. I think there were some concerns about, there still being ongoing impacts. And so the city commissioned the study by EDI, a different sound consultant. And that was their professional opinion, to the extent they expressed concerns about the fence. I think the challenge with technical studies of noise being the be-all, end-all, as you've heard, is that there are different variables and different measurements in different conditions. And so that is why I abandoned pursuing sort of different versions of the city-sponsored sound study, because I don't think that that was going to result in the clarity that we needed when we have also the special use permit tool.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Counselor Ohm.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's see. I have several questions. One is, could you briefly just enlighten me on how the state mandates the shooting range noise, like specific to the state? Maybe Patrick knows.
Yeah, there's a whole nother section on shooting ranges. I can't quote it off the top of my head right now, but there's a provision in state statute that says a individual or cannot compel a city, municipality to restrict noise from a shooting range. I think if it's above the decibel levels, you could, but shooting ranges have a use by right, essentially, is what we found out by state statute. And if a property owner moved in after a shooting range was in place, they cannot file a suit against the shooting range. This is a very layman's term of explaining that.
Thank you. The site plan and land use processing application states vehicles to enter from West 44th Avenue and travel around to the south to exit onto Gray Street. I said south. And then the SUP approved sheet C3.0 shows 2 do not enter signs on the Gray Street access. Page 401 states that those signs were removed, as did one of the speakers tonight, and also stated that the traffic issue with Gray Street. Did the city grant permission to remove those signs?
I don't know the answer to that. If it was something that our engineers or public works might have required, I can look into that.
And then on Exhibit J, page 162, states that staff, that access recommendation providing an exit only onto Gray Street to provide an escape route for queued cars. That's, I'm just reading that. My question is, could that access be cut off?
Gray Street would be required to stay as at least an exit only, and also I think it was a fire-related requirement. The
Thank
two
you.
access points, I believe, were both there with the prior car wash as well.
Thank you. Exhibit M, SUP is granted with the following conditions. Special use should be consistent with the representations depicted in the applications. Number 2, the architectural upgrades and site plan modifications shall be consistent with the SUP site plan and elevations. What I heard tonight was that the industry standard is not to keep the door closed. My question for the applicant is, why not show at least one of the doors open on the plan?
Yeah, it's a good question. Typically, we don't leave any elements off of the elevation that need to be conveyed to the city for approval. So let's say in some cases, we might have a door that has a series of vision panels in it. We might have an overhead door that's completely solid, or a sectional door versus a roll-up door. And so it's important for us to show all of those conditions rather than saying, here's a typical door, they're all the same. We typically don't do that.
Thank you. And then a follow-up question to the staff is, did city staff, as the doors are depicted as closed in the down position, did city staff reasonably rely on that representation of the doors are closed?
Yes, I believe that we did.
Thank you. Governed by the conditions of the permit, where in the land use case processing application, project narrative, special use permit criteria, does it state that dryers are to be used? Like any reference to dryers, I'll just say dryers. Dryers, blowers, I could not find any reference in any of those. I just want to know where specifically it said dryers or blowers, one of the two.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? Are you asking if dryers are mentioned anywhere in the SCP application?
Yeah, the land use case application, the project narrative, the special use permit criteria, I just want to know where that reference, specific reference to dryers or blowers. I'll even, even if you can, if there's a plan, like a mechanical plan, but I'm trying to figure out, I looked, I cannot find any reference specifically that says dryers or blowers in all those.
If it's not visible in the SCP application, which I have not searched for that specific word today, it likely would have showed up in the building permit application, if the equipment specifications were provided as a part of that. But I don't see the word dryer or blower as I search the PDF.
I think that's, that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Go to Councilor Snell.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple questions for both the applicant and our staff. First of all, the previous car wash that was in this location, did it ever at any time have blowers, dryers, anything? That's probably, Lauren, that might be for you.
I'm sorry, would you
That's okay.
repeat the question?
The previous car wash that was in this location, did it at any time ever have blowers or dryers of any sort?
I believe that in 2015, when the automatic bay was added, it may have, but not in the 4 open bays.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. For the applicant, just a couple of questions. The blowers that exist in your location, is that the same model of blower, the only model of blower that's always been in that location, or have they ever been changed?
Just to clarify, the blowers that we have in that bay, or in those bays now, have always been the same blowers?
Yep.
Is that the question?
That's my question. Yeah, that's my question.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
And then you probably question, there was a dryer on the previous one.
There was.
There was.
Thank you.
Automatic
Sorry.
bays, your question was that all automatic bays have dryers. And sometimes they're off-board or they're on-board would be the differentiation. The off-board are usually mounted to the outside of the building and are open air, and they're usually like extremely loud. Ours are on-board. But yes, the dryer's been the same the entire time. We simply had our engineer go in and install a VFD and literally cut the power. We didn't know we could do that until we were working with an engineer on a different project. And he came up with the idea, he says, why don't you just use a VFD and turn them down literally? And that's what we did to change them, but they've been the same, and the same on all of the rest of our locations.
Sure. Okay. Thank you for that. Just a couple questions. Well, one question on the fence. Sorry to make you get up and down again. Can you just clarify, I see some photos, but can you clarify what the material is that's made out of?
Yeah, so the fence was made, it's steel framing, 3/4 inch plywood, and then polyurethane, 1.5 inch thick foam. The reason we selected that material, talking with our sound engineer, was that the sound wall had to have a certain density or weight per square foot with that. And so we did the math and pulled the data sheets from the material and built it that way. And so that's how it was constructed.
Got it. Thank you. And it's 6 feet tall? How tall is it?
It is 6 feet tall on a 2 feet berm. So the way the elevation works, there's a hill between us and the adjacent property. And so the fence lies on top of that property. So it's technically 8 feet from our 0 level.
Got it. Okay. I think that's all the questions I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll go to Councilor Wood.
So I'm going to follow up with the noise barrier or fence questions myself. I work in transportation, so sound walls are something that I have some familiarity with. Of course, what we're talking about here is not really necessarily that same magnitude, but that doesn't mean that the principles might not be the same. I think my question really is for staff. It seems like, though noise is something that's subjective, there are standards. I know we've talked about 2 sets, but there are standards that are used, and there's accepted techniques of modeling that are used to design sound wall or barrier that would take care of sound attenuation. It sounds like, if I understood this correctly, and please correct me if I say it wrong, but maybe what was used in this case didn't quite meet the mark. Is there any reason to believe that going forward that we couldn't employ standard techniques and design and modeling to design a sound wall that would be built to certain specifications that we would have reason to believe would attenuate the noise impact?
Yes, I'm sure that could be done. I think the challenge is that the city is not in the position to come up with those design solutions. But yes, I think the appropriate sound engineer and expert could probably design and model something that would have more of an impact than what's out there today.
So it is something, even if it's not in the city's purview to do, it's something that could be potentially requested.
That's my understanding.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Councilor Martell.
Thank you, Mayor. I also have a follow-up question on the sound wall. You indicated it was 6 feet tall on the 2-foot berm. Was that the maximum height that it could be, or would there have been an opportunity to make that higher and offer some more sound mitigation?
When we requested the study and got feedback from our sound engineer, we asked them to draw a fence to help mitigate based on the height of our bay doors in our current facility. And the 8-foot height limit is what he originally came up with. Could you build it taller? Sure. There's always an opportunity to do that. When we asked the staff for approval before we built it, before we spent $70,000 on it, does this satisfy? The answer was yes, and that's why we built that wall. If the answer had been no, it needs to be something else or extra, just as any other requirement that has been given to us, we've jumped.
The only sort of thing I would add to that is the city's code allows for as a use by right, I think it's a fence up to 6 feet tall. And if you go taller, a variance or some other approval may be required. And I know there was probably, if that's something that's needed here that we're going to look into, we would need a variance from the city to get a taller fence. And that would just be something we'd have to work through. I think staff would, or has indicated historically, correct me if I'm wrong, Lauren, that there would probably be some support here for a variance in this particular instance for a taller fence, but I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, so the basically 8 foot, 6 foot on top of the 2-foot berm was what was recommended based on the sound study results that you received from your expert.
Yeah, from WAVE, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Councilor Larson.
Thank you, Mayor. And the vast majority of the questions I had, and I had quite a few, have been addressed. I appreciate the thoroughness of the reports from the city and from the Auto Wash folks. The first question I have is for the city. In the previous car wash's existence, was there a special use permit for that place?
That's a good question. We did look that up. I believe it was legally non-conforming based on the date that it opened. It did not appear to have a special use permit.
It was legally non-conforming.
In that it did not have a special use permit and was not required
Oh,
in
I see.
the 1990s.
Yeah, thank you. And then there was mention of during the early discussions of the discussions about a wall, but there was also discussion about a wall along the west side that was never built or was not included in the discussion.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know the details on that specific wall on the west side.
You know, it seems like it's part of the equation, I guess, and when some of the sound levels are measured. And then the other question I have is kind of brings us up to within the past month or so. The folks from Auto Wash are mentioned that there have been ongoing discussions about some of the progress made and some of the things that might still be attended to. And then the claim is that the city ended the discussion before the technical review is complete. It wasn't until after the 29th, this is, I'm sorry, on page 115 of tonight's agenda. It was not until April 29th of 2026, 13 days after Auto Wash received the second notice of noncompliance, that it received a final copy of the city's sound study dated April 5th, and only after Auto Wash submitted an open records request for public records did the final copy show up. Was there a reason for the city's reluctance to share that?
No, there was no reluctance. I think we had made the decision that we had been engaged for 15 months without a lot of voluntary or proactive action to try to mitigate results. The sound study that we commissioned demonstrated that they were not compliant in all conditions, and I was ready to move forward with a different course of action. So it was not withheld. It was just not provided until we had the core request, which was shortly after we had received the final version from our sound consultant.
So a decision was made in early April to end the discussions that were going on up until then.
I would not characterize this spring as active discussions back and forth. We needed more results. The sound study was not going to be the silver bullet that we had hoped that it might be, and we continue to observe and receive concerns about operations. So I changed course.
Great. That answers the questions I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Quinn, you have another question?
Thank you. And I'm looking at the recommendations for a possible ending for tonight. And city folks, says letter E, the noise compliance, the operation shall comply with all applicable noise standards, including state law, CRS 25-12-103 as amended, and those set forth in section 16-103 of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws. Is that definitive? And I'm asking on behalf of the residents and the car wash that this is the level, period. If it goes over that, we're not in compliance. And so we're all clear on what those levels are. Does that make sense?
I mean, I think the standards have been definitive. The city's code includes a standard that is reasonableness, and that is not a black and white standard. And the special use permit also provides sort of not a black and white standard. It says will limit impacts, and the application asserted there would be limited impacts. So it is, I think, as definitive as it can be.
Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you. Councilor Okada.
Thank you. Question for staff. The decibel limits, though probably not as easy to measure as like the speed limits of a car, those limits operate the same way where there is a threshold, and being above that threshold for any amount of time is the violation. I'm saying that as a statement, but it's really a question. Am I understanding that correctly?
It is a violation to be over the stated decibel limits, yes.
Thank you. The other question that I have is for the auto wash. In the statements, both in the materials but also in the presentation, there was a commitment to take the concerns of the community seriously, and also in the statements that we heard here tonight, there was also a claim, not a claim maybe, that might be not the accurate way to say it, but a claim that this might be the quietest car wash in the country. The sound complaints versus that seems to be incongruous to me. In the commitment to taking seriously the claims of the community, do you see a little bit of a contradiction there by a difficulty to take those claims seriously while also feeling like it could be the quietest car wash in the country?
Yeah, I think it's really, really difficult for us to figure out what we are supposed to do. We've made it the quietest car wash. On average, our sound is about 55 decibels at the property line and on the other side of the fence. I don't know how to get any quieter. Like, there's, like, we are hearing complaints about extremely loud noise and shrill and shrieking and all these things. We don't know what that is. I'm confused, honestly, when they say there's loud noises, because we hear 55, maybe 60 decibels, but we don't hear anything more, and so we don't know what is the cause for the excess noise where we're going. We know when a bus rolls by, it's about 85 decibels on 44th, so we know how loud that is, but it is hard, and we've been trying to figure out this whole time of like setting the standard and trying to meet that so that we can operate. Our biggest concern is the goalposts will be moved again. They've been moved twice on us already. And trying to create a sound wall, great, we build it 3 feet high because that's what everyone agrees is going to be great. And then there's still a reasonableness standard that says, I don't like it because on Easter Sunday, I couldn't hear it or whatever is the problem. And now we're back here again because it's just complaint driven. And we don't have that standard. I love that on the Gleam side of it, they said, hey, you know what? It's Denver. Here's the code. You don't like it. And there were a lot of people that were really mad about that and that they had to cancel their thing because they were continuing to complain and call the owners and call the councilmen and all that kind of stuff because it's not, you can't please everybody all the time. But if we have a standard and we know what that standard is supposed to be, we can engineer the car wash to meet that standard. We thought we did. Right? We had approval that we did. And then we got snowballed when we realized that they were doing another study without our help, without our assistance, without our involvement, and then got invited here.
Thank you. Just one more question for you.
Yeah.
The car wash in its current state does not have staffing on site where an interaction can be had there. But you mentioned earlier a customer service phone line that is meant to be associated with that. We have seen in the comments that were submitted online some of the interactions that were done with the customer service in that instance. As a business owner, the difficulty that exists with being able to satisfy customers that are there or the community that's around it without a physical person there, is that a possibility of difficulty that you can see in the future with being able to adhere to some of the difficulties that you have as a business owner? I know it's a hard question because you have 25 other locations that presumably might not be operating that same way, but I'm curious.
We actually pride ourselves in being able to run what we call unattended through software, through support, and through our systems. We have staff visiting the site every single day. On that site, anywhere from 2 to 4 hours, depending on the rotation and if someone calls in sick or whatever, that can make that vary a little bit. But between 2 and 4 hours a day, every day, someone is on that site with the goal to sweep curbs, empty trash, do all that kind of stuff. Customers from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. phone line that they can call, text, email, Facebook, Instagram, direct message. However, we are the most accessible car wash in the industry. And so however you want to reach out to us, please don't call our people and scream and yell. We have blocked a few of the neighbors from being able to call us because they've been belligerent and excessive with our customers. Our staff has been accosted by the neighbors. And so that's also a concern for us. So it does make it hard to service that when they get yelled at by the neighbors.
Thank you. That's all my questions.
Any other questions from council? I have one question that kind of came up during the presentation for the auto wash staff. You showed some pictures of some improvements to the doors as far as like sound mitigation and stuff goes. Why do the mitigation to the sound to the doors if you're not going to close them when they run?
That's a wonderful question. I think that may be a misunderstanding. Our entrance doors, which are the doors to the south, are closed over every single wash. And they have been since we got the first ticket, since they tried to put me in jail for just violating the sound ordinance, disturbing the public. We put those in right away. Like I said, we take these allegations seriously. So we have closed the doors on the entrance side from the very beginning, and they've stayed closed. Outside of, I think one instance where a grocery bag flew over the sensor and kept it open until we had a staff go over there and pull the grocery bag in front of the sensor, and then the door closed. That is our only exception to doing that. Doors have been closed with the sound on that side so that we can make it quieter, for sure.
Just on the entrance side, but not on the exit side?
In the winter on the exit side, once it gets warmer, we got to let those bays breathe. We've already lost 2 door operators due to there's the humidity in there. It rusts everything out really, really fast once it gets over about 50 degrees. And that water and sun in there is not, it's not pretty.
Thank you. One last time, any other questions? You will not be able to ask questions of staff or the auto wash once we close this portion of the, okay. I will go ahead and close the testimony portion of our hearing, and I will go ahead and open the deliberation portion. So, council, you may go ahead and deliberate, discuss. We'll make a motion after the deliberation. So, I will call on whoever wants to go first. Councilor Wood.
All right, well, staff has outlined for us, and I'm sure we could go beyond that if we wanted to as well, 3 options. With the first option being to, actually, I don't have it right in front of me, with the first option being to modify the special use permit with a number of suggested ways that we could do that. I am inclined to feel more like this is a way to go, to provide some opportunity and a way to come to a good end that would suit all, to address the issues, but also to allow the car wash to continue. Now, the conditions that are suggested in here are not without requirements, but I think that they are reasonable requirements in order to come to a situation where we have a business that operates in a neighborly way and a community that can work together.
Thank you. Go to Councilor Larson.
And thank you, Mayor. And looking at the, excuse me, the actions we're considering tonight, we have the 3 options. One is modify. The second option is to retain without change. And the third option tonight we're considering is to revoke the special use permit. I would suggest that council consider option 1, modifying the special use permit with the following changes that, and these are on page 10 of your agenda packet. Option 1, modify the special use permit, and then there's letters A through F. I would recommend that we keep or possibly modify the number A, the bay doors closed. That probably requires further discussion, but I think it is very important because what we're hearing is the sound reflecting across the street is causing part of the issue. We also keep B, which is hours of operation. I think those are pretty well established, and closing 8 o'clock does not seem like too much of a burden. I'd like us to consider deleting C, the on-site signage, because I tend to agree with the auto wash folks. They know how to put signs on their own locations that work. I would also suggest we delete D, the site maintenance, install, and regularly service trash cans, because that is something that, as any responsible business person knows, that if you let things like trash overflow, your customer is going to go away. I'd also recommend that we keep E as it is. The operation shall comply with all applicable noise ordinances, because that's just basically how we do business here. And then revise F to on monitoring, where we revise it somehow to simply say we are looking at periodic random sound measurements that cannot be sort of anticipated ahead of time, and then revise also the second part of that, the second sentence of F, to where we request or we conduct sound studies. These are sound studies conducted probably by our police department, that we conduct the sound studies when circumstances change, such as equipment changes or operational changes or a recommissioning of the Eastern Bay.
Thank you. Councilor Okada.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councilmember Larson. There are a couple of things that I want to kind of add to that piece. Well, we might already be in a position where we could be able to get to trim away keeping the special use permit as is, and also trim away revocation. I'm curious if we might be able to make that progress right now and then focus on the modification clause. Is that consensus to remove the possibility of revocation and remove the possibility of keeping the special use permit as is? Check me. Hands for consensus.
I don't know that we can
Yeah.
make a consensus in a meeting like this, so.
Thank you.
Go ahead and just make your.
By
your
discussion then. So on the issues when it comes to modification, a couple of the pieces that you mentioned, Councilmember Larson, that I want to take a maybe closer look at on the potential revision to option 1A. Doors may be opened only for vehicle entry and exit. I think you might be suggesting maybe that is a little bit too closed of a position there. It already says shall remain fully closed during all wash and dry cycles. So if no activity is happening in the bay, then allowing it to be open is okay, even if that means that no vehicle entry or exit is occurring. That would be my suggestion for the revision on option A. On option F, I would like to keep it by request, but I like the idea of imposing limits on staff for the frequency of request, and maybe making those limits be of a nature where if we want sound studies beyond a limitation of that request, then we would be not asking the auto wash to foot the bill. Those are the revisions that I would suggest for A and for F. Otherwise, I'm in complete alignment with you, Dan, on that. My suggestion for that limitation would be twice annually for that limitation for the revision of section F.
We'll go to Councilor Ohm.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm in favor of the option 1, adding conditions. I would say that I'm in support of the bay doors being closed unless for some reason that the applicant could, demonstrate some further sound walls facing to the east. And I'm not sure that can happen because of, that's an entry-exit site triangles. And so I don't know that that's a possibility. And then as far as keeping everything, maybe potentially modifying F, as Councilmember Okada said, that they're for staff to work something out so that there's some type of reasonable limit. Two times a year seems reasonable as a max. And that's it for me. I'm not, we've had a lot, the neighbors, the constituents that have voiced their opinions tonight has not been that they want to revoke the special use permit. They want to find a path forward that reduces the sound. And so I am in favor of the option 1 modifying. Thank you.
We'll go Councilor Quinn and then Councilor Snell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too am in favor of option 1, figuring out some conditions that we can all live with. Got to be honest, in the beginning, I was a number 3 guy. I was tired of this. The neighbors around there that spoke tonight convinced me otherwise. Trying to not be too emotional on this. You guys' website rallied the troops like we were all gonna, to me, the way we got some correspondence from people all over the city in support of the car wash, which I appreciate that. And I appreciate your ability to rally the troops. But, you talked about being here in good faith and, wanting to be a good member of the community. But, some of the actions tonight, I didn't see that. So I'll be in favor of the first option. But like I said, we don't live next door to this. They do. And they're the ones that have to deal with this day in, day out. Not 24/7, but doggone close to it. And, my heart goes out to them. I realize you all put forth several hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars into this investment. But you got 26 of these, so we know what's going on. So, when you say you're out money, I agree you're out some money, but they're out some peace of mind. They're out some, their own piece of what we heard tonight. So, anyhow, that's all I've got to say. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Snell.
Thank you, Mayor. To our immediate question, I would also be in favor of option one, especially with the suggestion that Councilor Okada made about having the doors open until a vehicle comes in. And then all of the other suggestions, I guess the signage, I do agree, no one reads any signs anymore. So removing that. But I want to recognize Councilor Quinn because I have something similar thoughts in this. I'm really glad that the neighbors once again showed up tonight because I'm really glad that you folks from Auto Wash got to hear them. And I'm sure that you probably have heard a lot of that before, but it sounds like maybe some of the call center folks got to hear it first. And I said again because they've been here and spoken with us many times, and I know just from my own street, my own neighbors, there is this spirit of looking out for each other and banding together and making sure that we're speaking up for each other. And I want to recognize that and appreciate that so much because that's part of what makes our community so great. And to also support what Councilor Quinn said, when you're home, when your safe place, your home is somehow compromised, that just kind of takes everything else in your life to a different level. And so when you're not able to operate your business, when you're not able to have peaceful time to just be quiet, read, spend time with family, whatever it is, I see that everything else kind of goes by the wayside. So all that to say, I'm grateful to the neighbors for showing up and giving us their experience again, but also grateful for you folks for being able to hear that, listen to that, and hopefully have some empathy and put yourself in their shoes. So to close, I would definitely be in favor of option one, with the bay doors open except when a vehicle is in, and then getting rid of the signage. And then for the monitoring at least 2 times a year, I would be in favor of that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Martell.
Thank you, Mayor. I too am in favor of the modification option. I agree with point A being updated to the doors always being closed if the bay is in use. And I'm fine with point B. I could take or leave point C or D. For point E, I appreciate that it is very clearly stated in point E that the operation shall comply with all applicable noise standards, including the state law and those set forth in the Wheat Ridge codes. And I believe point E should be expanded to include the language of the third point, which is state, city, and reasonableness, so that it is documented here that that reasonableness is a variable in this SUP. And part of that is to echo Councilmember Snell and Councilmember Quinn. The last gentleman who spoke in public comment tonight has been, many of them have been here many times. And in the past, one of the things that really brought this to focus for me, similar to how Councilmember Snell said, when it's your home and it's your peace, he has brought in a recording from his home of hearing the car wash. And I don't know what the decimal was. I don't know the statistics on that recording, but he played it for 1 minute. And in that 1 minute, my sound anxiety triggers were so heightened, and I'm not living next door to it. And that made me very sympathetic to our neighbors and wanting to find a solution that isn't just business is bad or isn't business rules, but find some kind of compromise and really finding a place where the business can be successful and the neighbors can get some restored peace. And so with that, on point F, I agree some limitations on the frequency of measurements and studies. I do think that because we've had recent decimals above the limit, to come in right now and say no more than twice a year, I think more often that might be necessary for a year. And then if we have consistent testings that are
decibel limits that we are trying to define here. The sense has been expressed by Autowash that the goalposts have been moving. A counterpoint to that I felt is that these statutes have existed and those aren't moving. But if we were to add an element of reasonableness, then we add an interpretability into that space. I might be wrong. Are you seeing a way for that to not have interpretability?
I think that's a great point. And my understanding from when we were able to ask questions of staff was that reasonableness was a requirement. And so I don't know if we have the possibility of eliminating that, then I would be for that. If we don't have the authority to remove that, then I would like it to be in the documentation.
I understand. It would.
Let me recognize the city attorney real quick.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I could just add, the standard that you were referring to as reasonableness in your local code, the standard you were referring to as reasonableness in your local code is really a prohibition against any unreasonable noise, right, that is then defined by way of several sentences. I'm a little uncomfortable with the shorthand of just making reference to reasonableness, right? The condition is written as it is because the requirement isn't that you only engage in reasonable noises, that you avoid unreasonable noises as specifically defined in that code. So I'm a little uncomfortable with simply giving the shorthand of, including reasonableness. It is inherent in the reference to 16103. Right?
Okay.
It is the only standard that is applicable to this noise in terms of the decimal standards, which has been discussed, only applies to industrial.
Fair. For me, it was more of a, if it's something that the auto wash is going to be held to that isn't already in a code, I wanted it added so that it wasn't a surprise again to them, as well as a protection for the residents.
With all due respect for auto wash, that provision of the code is within our general offenses. Right?
Okay.
It is very similar to prohibitions of unreasonable noise that exist in a variety of different contexts. Has received judicial gloss, and the fact that there is a definition to define unreasonableness, it suggests to me that it is not a subjective standard that is being grabbed out of the air and imposed. So again, I would suggest take a hard look at 16103 before you decide that the reference as it sits isn't sufficient.
Fair. Thank you so much. And so, Councilmember Okada, to your point, I'm fine taking the language out. But I'm not sure if me taking that language out meets your goal because it's still implied.
You're right about that. Yes. Hearing Mr. Renaud's points about that, I do feel like that feels solid on my area because of the existing definitions, the existing rulings that exist on the reasonableness side of that. I do sense a motion forming, and I welcome counter motions if I'm getting this wrong.
We'll have the city attorney go ahead and formulate our motion for us, and then we'll.
Super smart. Okay.
Or give it a shot.
Or if you want to give it a shot, but I think he's been taking notes. So.
Okay. It does seem to me that no, I think that's it for me. I think everything that I'm particularly concerned about is addressed.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Wood, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, this goes along with what we've been talking about, noise compliance and how that's worded. there's something that keeps bothering me about it, so I might as well bring it up now and see what you guys think. So it says the operation shall comply with all applicable noise standards, including state law and those set forth in 16103 of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws. And then Councilor Martell mentioned the standards and noting those. There has been brought up more than once that, you know, that maybe the auto wash has felt like things have been a moving target from time to time. In achieving noise compliance, you know, right now what we have in place to ensure that is monitoring periodically or twice a year or however it's decided that that should be handled. But the way to really try to ensure compliance is to have an understanding what the impact is and require something be put in place to avoid that impact so that it's in place all the time, regardless of whether you're measuring or monitoring. So I had this thought that some language at the end of that says, that talks about compliance through either operational or physical mitigations or through either, let me start over, I can't even read my own writing, through either operational or physical mitigation determined through modeling to achieve compliance with the standards. Because if that were required, then again, theoretically at least through modeling, you would be ensured that you would be meeting that requirement or in compliance theoretically at all times.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Mayor, if you don't mind, Councilmember Wood, would you run that by one more time?
I'll read how it would go, except I don't have the standards piece that Councilor Martell mentioned. So the operation shall comply with all applicable noise standards, including state law and those set forth in section 16103 of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws through either operational or physical mitigation as determined through modeling to achieve compliance with the standards. Phrase may need to go one for the other there. It is implied exactly. Councilor Larson, not arguing that. It just explains the means to get there, rather than saying you'll be in compliance, but it doesn't offer anything to get to that point that you will stay in compliance.
Yeah, I don't know, it just seems that we're adding some specifics where there may not be needed.
Agreed. I put it out there again to try to address the comments about moving target.
Go ahead.
I have one last question.
As long as it's to the city attorney, that's fine. As long as it's not to the staff or to the.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay.
Let me recognize the city attorney, because I agree with Councilor Okada that we might have a motion somewhat formed.
Somewhat.
Okay.
I believe the motion, and this is point of in gathering of where we have consensus. I believe the motion would be to adopt option 1, the modification of special use permit, with item A modified to remove the second sentence, so that it's simply a requirement that all the bay doors remain fully closed during all wash and dry cycles. There are no limitations outside of that. The motion would include B as written. The motion would remove C from the list of conditions entirely. The motions would adopt D as presented and E as presented, and would modify the F monitoring to state, upon request by the city, made not more than twice in each calendar year. And then back into the operator shall conduct and submit. That would be the motion as I understand it.
So moved.
So I have a motion by Councilor Ohm. Do I have a second on that motion? Do I have a second on that motion?
Before you get a second,
Oh, wait, hold on. Go ahead.
Before you get a second, I would add to the motion a request by you to the city attorney's office to prepare findings consistent with your decision to be brought back and considered at the council's next regular meeting.
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion by Counselor Ohm. Go ahead and one more time. So, okay, so we have a motion by Counselor Ohm. Do we have a second on that motion? Yeah. I have a second by Counselor Quinn. Do we have discussion on that motion? Counselor Okada.
I might have misunderstood consensus there because one of the pieces that surprised me about that consensus was the site maintenance, the regularly serviced trash cans. Am I alone in misunderstanding that? Because I thought we were removing that one. Is that
That was kind of my understanding too, as Mr. Larson said. I think so.
Okay. Do we have a friendly amendment to that motion to remove, what number is that?
So
C?
moved. That
D.
was
D.
D, so moved.
D. Okay, so we have an amendment to that motion to remove D.
second?
Okay. We have a second. Do we need to vote on the
You need to vote on that,
amendment
yeah.
on the motion? Okay, so do we have discussion on the amendment? Okay, seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council just on the amendment to the motion, please? Just removing D.
Okay. We have 7 ayes. The amendment carries.
Okay, so D is removed, so we'll go back to the original motion minus D. Do we have discussion on that motion? Okay, seeing none, will the clerk please poll the count? Oh, wait, do you have discussion on that motion?
I would just like to get any comments, or if anyone also has concerns around, at least right away, with so many residents still talking about noise levels. Does anybody else think twice a year is enough until we see a pattern of compliance?
Well, we have a motion on the floor, so I guess, do we have, okay, so would anybody else like to raise their hand and answer? Okay, Counselor Snow.
I appreciate Counselor Martell bringing that up again. I do feel like to kind of level set, and with the heightened concern from neighbors and seeing how, just wondering how this is going to roll out, I would support having more monitoring in this first calendar year to see a pattern of improvement.
Counselor Okada.
Thank you, Mayor. Knowing from the timeline, the amount of time it took for the sound studies to be able to process, and knowing that the sound studies are expensive, experts of this type are costly to the business, and knowing that this would be based upon requests from city staff, I feel very comfortable with the twice annual limitation because it already does feel like it might even be frequent on its own. I don't think, from my perspective, that additional sound studies would be enhancing of any enforcement that we'd be able to apply to it. And therefore, from my perspective, I'm prepared to vote in the affirmative, along with the limit of 2 annual.
Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council? This is on the motion.
Councilmember
This is on the
Snow?
full motion, yeah, minus D.
Okay, thank you. Okay, 7 ayes, no nays, motion carries.
Okay. So we have a motion and we have that, so we're all good. So we will go ahead and move on to our next agenda item, which I believe sends us all the way back to City Attorney's Matters.
I think that's all we have. I think that the request or direction to the city attorney to draft written findings was made as part of the motion, if I recall. So
You've got everything you need, right? You've got a
I've got
motion
everything I
passed?
need on
Okay.
that. Jerry will be back at the next meeting, and we'll bring a set of findings for your consideration.
All right. Mr. Renault, thank you for filling in today. We really appreciate you.
Thank you very much. It's been
Making
my
this go
pleasure.
smoothly. We'll go on to city manager's matters.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Sorry, just one item this evening. I know it's late, but I think the Mayor Pro Tem and the mayor reached out to all of you about communications with the fire districts. That all familiar? Nope, everybody didn't get a call. So, we had presentations from both fire districts a few weeks ago. They are considering sales tax ballot increases this November. The cities of Lakewood and Edgewater have approached me to potentially draft a letter to send to West Metro Fire District to encourage them to look at other options besides sales tax, because sales tax is such a impactful revenue source for the city, as you all know. It's just a letter encouraging them to think for other options, maybe looking at property tax again. South Metro Fire District was going to look for sales tax increase last year. The cities of Lone Tree, Centennial, and Aurora had discussions with them, presentations, and they did convince them to stick with property tax, and they were successful in raising that. So I think you've heard some of our concerns at the council workshop about sales tax being our #1 revenue source, and this could significantly impact us and our revenue generating sources. So looking for consensus if council's okay with us communicating with the fire districts in this manner.
Do we have a consensus to communicate with the fire district through letter? Go ahead, Councilor Snell.
Sorry, just a quick question.
Yes.
This is in preparation for their board meeting tomorrow, is that correct?
Yes.
And you would craft your own letter, or it would be part
It's
of
been
that?
drafted. City of Edgewater
The one that
drafted
we
the
got.
letter for my signature and Kathy Hudson and Lakewood and
Yeah.
Dan Maples and it's professional letter, just asking them to reconsider, think about the city's needs as well.
Got it,
Yep.
okay, thank you.
Yep. Do we have a consensus to send that letter?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to elected officials matters, and I do ask that you keep it brief. Councilor Okada.
Thank you. Just wanted to say I went to was it Sunday? Saturday. Saturday, I was joined by Councilmember Ohm, Councilmember Larson, and Councilmember Wood at the Red Rocks Community College graduation. And boy, that was a fun time. That was a really good time. It was great to be invited to be able to celebrate with everybody and to enjoy that moment. The only other thing I want to mention is Councilmember Larson and I have a district meeting at the Historical Society this upcoming Saturday from 9 to noon, and we hope to see a whole lot of people there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Larson.
Thank you, Mayor. It was Saturday watching all of these very smiley young people. I mean, normally you don't see that many young people smiling at the same time. And they're all proud and standing up straight. And I don't know, it was just a lot of fun. I don't want to forget the fact that last Tuesday, Patrick Goff, our city manager, presented the State of the City at the Wheat Ridge Business Association monthly meeting, and there were no surprises. And then joined the mayor and other distinguished guests at the ribbon cutting for O'Reilly's. That was on Friday morning, and a perfect morning. And then in the middle of the week, I traveled to Pueblo, Colorado to participate in the National Association of Housing and Redevelopment Officials Colorado Chapter 2026 Annual Conference, where there was a panel put together consisting of our very own Shannon Terrell, with the senior housing planner with the Community Development Department, the City of Wheat Ridge, along with a representative from Foothills Regional Housing and another from Design Concepts, a landscape architect, and the Pochner Company, all talking about what a wonderful thing is going on up there at Ridge Road and the Foothills Regional Housing Project in connection with Red Rocks Community College nursing campus out there. I got to moderate this, and so that meant I was able to ask the questions instead of having to answer them. Most enjoyable, and I have to say that Shannon did a fantastic job. She really nailed it with that one. It was a good conference. I had an opportunity to have an official Pueblo slopper sandwich. Have you ever had one? Open-faced bun, ground beef, cheese, and a whole bunch of green chili. I passed. I just wasn't brave enough. But anyway, it was a wonderful time, and I'm glad we were able to participate and talk about the Ridge Road housing project that is going to be fantastic. Thanks.
If you want one of those, if you don't, Aguas Calientes has an amazing one. All right, Councilor Ohm.
Thank you, Mayor. I did have a great time at the Red Rocks, and it was amazing to have the, I guess it was a Scottish band? Irish bagpipes, yes, thank you. And they did an amazing job as we came in and left. The views were incredible. The students were very, very passionate. They really had a community. That's what really impressed me, is they found their community, and I think a lot of that goes to the president, Landon Pires, and he gave an amazing speech about trying to find balance in life. Is kind of what I took away from that. I don't know if we all heard that, but I was just really impressed with what he's done. And the other thing I want to touch on is that when I was a kid, I went to 3 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, and 2 high schools. And growing up, I always wished that my kids could have went, stayed in one place and had friends. And so that's exactly what my son and daughter have done. They've been very fortunate to have, gone to the Wheat Ridge schools, stay in Wheat Ridge their entire life. My son made friends in 6th grade, sent these 2 other boys, and they're all graduating. He's graduating this Friday, and all 3 of them are going to Western University in Gunnison. And I think that's amazing to have lifelong friends. So thank you.
Thank you. Go to Councilor Wood.
So I'll just say ditto to the Red Rocks Community College graduation. That was wonderful. I was so glad I got to attend. It's always exciting to see people starting out in life and knowing that they have a great road ahead. And they all looked excited. Their families were there, proud of them. It was really nice to be there. The only other thing I'll mention is later this week on Thursday and Friday, Mayor Pro Tem Hulteen and I are going to a conference. It's a Civic Canopy Summit in Colorado Springs, which is really about civil discourse and about in times when you have differing opinions and the rhetoric is not always the best. It's ways to make it better. So I'm looking forward to that and more to come on that after we've gone.
Thank you. Councilor Quinn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Briefly, congratulations to Steve Art on his retirement. Sorry if I took somebody's wind out of their sails on that. It was a nice retirement party today. I'm looking forward to mine someday in the distant future. Thanks to the public for showing up tonight and voicing their opinion. Hope this shows that you were heard and local government has supported you, and we're working towards a solution of peaceful coexistence with the car wash in the neighborhood. The concert at the 38th, at the Green on 38th was a good time Friday night. Saturday was I attended the open house, not the open house, the block party at Esther's up at 26 and Kipling. I took the 16-week-old baby Rottweiler there. He walked in and I had to carry him out because he was tired. And he's 50 pounds. Oh my God. And he's got another 100 to go, I swear. Other than that, that was all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Martel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was not able to attend Red Rocks graduation this weekend because I was in Kansas seeing 2 of my nephews graduate. But it was also great to be with all those great graduates. So congratulations to everyone. Last week, I was honored to attend the Action Center Western Gala event, and it was amazing to see all the support that the Action Center is receiving. It was a great event. And I just want to remind everyone that there's a movie at the Green on Friday night. And thank everyone who came out and spoke today. I know this was a long time in the works tonight, and hopefully we found a good solution for everyone.
Thank you. We'll go to Councilor Snell.
Thank you, Mayor. Very briefly, I just wanted to also recognize the neighbors that joined us tonight again, spending their Monday evenings with us over the past few months. Like I said, I really value any time I see folks standing up for each other, looking out for each other, because that is truly what makes us a community, and that is also what makes us great and what makes us Wheat Ridge. I also am thankful for the conversation that we had here on the dais, and I'm thankful that we as counselors understand that we're here for our constituents and for our community, and making sure that everyone feels seen and heard and safe, and still while upholding the fact that Wheat Ridge is a great place to do business, and just understanding that there's a lot of finer points that need to be talked about. But I think we did a great job up here. And tomorrow morning, Councilor Martell and I have our office hours again. And then we are going back to our normal schedule of every first and third Tuesday. But tomorrow morning, we will be at Ann's Pie Cafe, 9 to 11. Please come join us, and we will see you then. That's all I've got.
Thank you. Thank you to everybody who was here tonight, and for your respectful tone and the way everybody conducted themselves. It's been an emotional couple of months for many of you, and we appreciate you handling things the right way. I want to thank Mr. Goff for an awesome presentation at the WRBA on Tuesday last week. As always, did a fantastic job, and I think it's easy, frankly, because we got a lot of good stuff going on in Wheat Ridge. So, easy job. Also, Councilor Larson and Councilor Quinn and I helped cut the ribbon for the O'Reilly Auto Parts on 50th and Kipling the other day. That's our third or fourth ribbon cutting down in that corridor over the last couple months. It is cool to see that corridor changing for the better. Speaking of our corridors changing for the better, we had our second round of funding from the Wadsworth Grant Program. So again, thank you to council for authorizing that. I can't remember how many businesses it was off the top of my head, but about $42,000 in grants were given out the other day. So, and thank you to Local Works and Paige for her leadership on that. She did a great job. I also want to thank our Parks and Rec Department, Beth June specifically, for our first concert on the Green was phenomenal on Friday night. Beth does a great job putting those together. Our first performer, Kai White, 14-year-old DJ, did a phenomenal job, and it was a great turnout. Part of the reason I think it was a great turnout, Stevens had their carnival right before it, and they had 400 or 500 people hanging out, playing, doing all this cool stuff out there, and then they all came out to the Green and hung out with Kai, and it was a really good time. So you talk about community. I had eight or nine people come up and just thank me for what we've done with the Green and all the programming that's going on there and the community feel. And so it's great to see something actually reach the finish line and get exactly what we want out of it. Speaking of that community, Councilor Quinn and I believe I saw Nat there running around at the block party at Gold's the other day. Again, Local Works does a phenomenal job with that, but it was great to see all the businesses engaged and so many people there. I had the opportunity to hand out Peak T-shirts Wheat Ridge T-shirts to the kids at Peak Elementary School the other day that were continuing to first grade. So I think it was almost 50 kids that got their and if you want to feel old, 2038 is when those kids will be graduating from high school. So get in your DeLorean, because where we're going, we hopefully won't need roads by then. So if counselors, if you guys are interested, Prospect Valley, 1 p.m. on Wednesday for shirts there. And then Stevens, 10 a.m. on the 27th. Thank you, Counselor. Hold that up for me so I can have it. Today, we had the retirement party, the official one, I guess, for our city's economic development director. So we want to say thank you to Steve Art, 15 years. And for many of us who've been around that much time, if you were walking in Carnation Festival parades 15 years ago, we were walking against a bunch of empty buildings and nobody there. And now, partially with Steve's help, we've got a ton of businesses on 38th Avenue, and it's only getting better. One more thing, and thank you to Councilor Ohm for reminding me, tomorrow is Public Works Open House, so that's over at the Public Works Shop from 3 to 7 p.m., and that is just off of 44th and Parfait. Thank you, Mr. Goff. So if you can, get down there and check out the Public Works offices. They have a lot of cool stuff down there, lots of really big, cool toys to look at and that sort of thing. But find out what our Public Works Department actually does and how much they do for our city, because our Public Works employees work incredibly hard for our city. So we have no meeting coming up next Monday. Monday is Memorial Day. I'm sure many of you will be looking at barbecues and all that sort of thing. So if you are looking at doing something for Memorial Day and you're looking to stock up, if you can find it, you should find it and buy it in Wheat Ridge. And we will see you all on June 1st, I believe it is, for a study session. We are adjourned.